owner of the US Mega Farmest video is Puramon para intratnamiento wino infringed de recos de autorenales. Los de recos de la novela y la imagen son del autor original, no reclama más propiedad. No te gusta esperar y quieres escuchar este fanfic completo ahora? Suscríbete a nuestro Patreon, donde encontrarás los mejores fanfics. Chapter 251 Selling Fish, Subscription and Reward. A lobster costs 2 to 3,000 yuan, 10 lobsters cost 2 to 3,000 yuan, and 100 lobsters cost 2 to 300,000 yuan. Converted into RMB, that's 1 to 2 million yuan. This doesn't include the huge yellowfin tuna. Just one net like this can bring in nearly 10 million yuan. What a concept. Thinking back to the past, I worked hard for a salary of 5 to 6,000 yuan a month, but now, just by casting a net at sea, I can earn nearly 10 million yuan. Thinking about it, Qinzu felt a little dazed, as if everything now seemed unreal. He was really worried that one day when he woke up, the sky would still be the same, life would still be the same, and everything would return to its origin. Hey, boss, be careful. In a trance, Qinzu was pushed by Aiden next to him and staggered, and almost lost his balance. When he came to his senses and looked back, he found a lobster with a body length of nearly 80 centimeters, holding its big claws and waving it towards where he had just stood. In this somewhat stuffy fish tank, Qinzu's forehead was sweating. Looking at the guy's huge front claw, he had no doubt that he would go straight to the hospital if he caught him. Giving a grateful look at Aiden next to him, Qinzu decided in his heart, well, seeing that you are so attentive, I will give you a raise when I go back. Okay, everyone, hurry up and see if you can drag another net in time. Bull said beside him, and several people began to sort and pack them again. Compared with the last time, there were more fish and less other things. This time, other things accounted for almost 70%. The bottom of the fishery has not been touched for several years, so there are still many good things. Hundreds of lobsters of all sizes, all of which are less than 2 catties, that is, 1 kilogram of lobsters, were thrown back to the bottom of the sea. In the United States, lobsters are also graded. Every half pound is a grade. In the market, the smallest one sold as 1 pound, called net. This is the smallest grade, but it doesn't sell for much money. The bigger ones are called quarters, the bigger ones are called SE. X, the biggest ones are over 2 pounds, called jumbo, and the ones without claws are called cull, which are worthless. There are only a dozen or so lobsters under 1 kilogram. Even if all are picked up, there are still more than 110 lobsters to sell, and these lobsters alone are a considerable income. In addition to big lobsters and crabs, there are also many shellfish in this net. But basically, these shellfish were thrown back into the sea by Will and Simon, which made Qinzu a little puzzled. Boss, these shellfish are not worth much, and it is a waste of space on the hull to take them back. Aiden, who was standing by, was very good at observing people's expressions. Seeing that Qinzu didn't understand, he quickly explained. Not worth money. How could it be? Qinzu was even more confused after hearing this. In China, these shellfish are not cheap. Well, it's really not worth much. Not many people will buy it. If you want to eat it, just pick them up. Besides, not many people will eat it. Qinzu's words confused Aiden. Is this thing valuable? But I remember it was very cheap. Well, okay, Qinzu was speechless. It seems that the Americans really don't eat this thing. Just throw it back. Anyway, these shellfish can also be used as food for fish after raising fish in the future, so it won't be wasted. In addition to these shellfish, some small octopuses and small squids were also thrown back. These are all baits for raising fish in the future. In addition to these guys, there are also some broken stones, broken corals and reefs. A lot of fish were caught here, but the most caught fish is the flounder. Maybe not many people know about the flounder, but once you mention the flatfish, I guess everyone knows it. This kind of flatfish lives on the seabed. When the net was pulled up, all kinds of flounders were everywhere, big and small. Just like before, the small ones were thrown away and the valuable ones were put away. However, Qinzu's luck seemed to have run out. Among so many flounders, none was longer than 50 centimeters. They were all caught in the lobsters. After sorting out the mess of fish, it was already past 3 in the afternoon. Boss, do you want to cast another net? Will looked at the sky, turned around and looked at Qinzu and asked. No, what should I do with these fish? Where can I sell them? Qinzu also raised his hand to check the time. It was already a little late. If he cast another net, these fish would definitely not be sold today. Although he didn't know where to sell the fish, he knew that these places would definitely not be open at night. Okay, let's go to Boston now. There is a fishing port there that specializes in collecting fish. As he said that, Will stood up and walked into the cab, and the fishing boat that was still parked on the water suddenly issued a low whistle and headed towards Boston in the distance. The fishing boat sailed for more than an hour, and a vague fishing port had appeared in front of Kinzu and others. At this time, there were many boats coming in and out of this fishing port. It can be seen that these people are fishermen. The purpose of coming here is self-evident. Looking at the boats coming in and out, Kinzu seemed very surprised. He looked at Aiden next to him and asked, "Hey, it's so late, there are so many fish sellers here." "Ha, boss, it's the peak season now." Hearing Kinzu say that it was very late, Aiden next to him couldn't help but smile bigly. "It's late now. You don't know how late we came back when we went out to sea before." "Ah? It's past 4 o'clock. Aren't they about to get off work? Is this still the peak period?" Kinzu raised his wrist again and looked at the hour hand on the peak leap. It had already turned to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. "Boss, if you are confused by those statistics, you should know that among us fishermen, which one doesn't go out in the morning and come back in the evening? It's a rare opportunity to go out to sea. Who would be willing to come back if they don't earn enough money for fuel?" Aiden next to him once again showed his chatterbox side. It seemed that he would never stop talking. Just as Kinzu and Aiden were chatting there, the fishing boat slowly entered the fish market. Most of the general offshore fishing boats are more than 20 meters long. Those more than 30 meters long can go to the ocean for fishing. Of course, the real big ships are purse-and fishing boats, which are 70, 80 meters, or even hundreds of meters long. But in terms of trawling, Kinzu's Tycoon no. One is already the largest type of trawler. Thanks to Fengxia Ahi and Chemizi for the reward, and Dodafu for the reward of 1,000 starting coins. Today is the first update. It's a new month and a new week. Please subscribe and reward. Chapter 252. Unexpected price, subscription and reward. The fishing boat slowly approached the fishing port, but the berths in the port were obviously not enough, so they had to wait slowly on the side. After waiting for a long time, it was their turn to enter the port, so Will controlled the big guy and approached the port. "Wow, such a big ship. Is it an ocean-going fishing boat?" "Why is it here?" "I don't know, it looks like an ocean-going fishing boat. Why are they here to dock?" The arrival of such a large fishing boat immediately caused the owners of the small fishing boats around to talk about it. After all, this is just a small trading port, and no ocean-going fishing boats have ever docked here. "Boss, which fishing company do you want to choose to sell?" As soon as the boat docked, Will ran over and asked Kinzu, "Are there many fishing companies collecting fish here?" Kinzu heard this and asked curiously. After all, this port is not big or small, there shouldn't be many companies coming here, right? "Ha, of course, boss, although the port here is not big, it is indeed a place where fishermen often come. There are several purchasing points of fishery companies here, which are open all year round." Seeing Will's familiar look, Kinzu simply said, "Let's do this, find a company you're familiar with, I believe you." After that, he just smiled and looked at him. Being stared at by Kinzu made Will feel a little uncomfortable, and he patted his chest and assured, "Boss, don't worry, it is definitely the most reasonable and fair price." Patting his shoulder, Kinzu smiled and said nothing. In fact, when he said this, Kinzu knew that he must have someone familiar here. Sure enough, not long after Will got off the boat, he led a blonde white man in his 50s with a big beer belly to come over. "Boss, let me introduce you. This is Bruce Frank from SYNOPSIS Seafood. He is the supervisor here." Will pointed at Kinzu and introduced him to Frank. "This is my boss, Keen from Tycoon Manor." Hello, Mr. Keen, you're really a young talent." Frank smiled and stretched out his hands, and shook hands with Kinzu very enthusiastically. He heard from his old friend Will that Tycoon Manor was the former Hill Manor. It was a big guy worth hundreds of millions of dollars, even more than the total assets of their company. "Hello, Mr. Frank, I hope we can have a pleasant cooperation in the future." With a faint smile and stretching out his hand, Kinzu also shook hands enthusiastically with the white old man with two mustaches on his nose in front of him. This guy is related to the source of his future points. It's better to build a good relationship first. "Clean, you're really too polite. You don't mind me calling you like this, right?" "Just call me Frank." Feeling Kinzu's enthusiasm, Frank responded enthusiastically. The two of them were like old friends who hadn't seen each other for many years, and they were as intimate as anything. Ahem, boss, let's let Frank go and see the catch first. Will, who was standing by, couldn't stand it anymore, so he coughed twice, interrupting the two people's greetings, and sighed deeply in his heart. No wonder one of them is the boss and the other is the supervisor, while he is just a small worker. Yes, Will is right. Come on, Frank, please come in. Kinzu took the lead and led Frank and Will to the cold fish hold. He didn't take this guy to see the yellowfin tuna first, but was ready to listen to his offer for these ordinary fish before making a decision. It doesn't matter whether Will told him that he had a yellowfin tuna here. It's best if he didn't tell him, so he can see whether the price this guy gave is fair or not. And if he told him, it would be even better. As long as he is not a fool, he will know what Kinzu means when he sees his behavior, so the price he gives is even less likely to be unfair. It has to be said that after coming to the United States, Kinzu's heart has also become a little cautious. Oh, great guy, Clean, it seems that you have a good harvest this time. Frank only took a quick look and praised with a smile. The things he saw were not cheap, and he believed that there must be precious things that were not taken out. After all, the fishery of Tycoon Manor has not been open for fishing for a long time. Kinzu looked for a long time, and was not sure whether this guy knew about the yellowfin tuna, so he said directly, "Well, Frank, just give me a price, and I will sell it to you if it is suitable." Hearing this, Frank pondered for a while and said, "How about this, Clean? I will give you $12 per kilogram for Atlantic cod, $8 per kilogram for herring, and $200 per kilogram for lobsters above 2 kilograms, and $20 per kilogram for those below 2 kilograms. As for the rest of the flatfish, we will follow that current market price. What do you think?" Hearing Frank's offer, Kinzu was silent for a while, and was a little surprised. It was not that the price he quoted was too low, but it was a little high. Before coming in, he had already checked. As for the cod market this year, although it is still rising, the export price is only around $15. If they take back $13, they really won't make much profit. As for lobsters, the price is slightly higher than the market price. Take an 8-kilogram lobster for example, that is $1,600, which is nearly 10,000 yuan when converted into RMB. The cost price alone is 10,000 yuan. Who can afford it? What? Are you not satisfied? Clean, this price is really very fair. It can be said that the other companies will never offer higher than me. Seeing Kinzu not speaking for a long time, Frank was a little anxious. This time he really gave the highest price, just to build a long-term cooperative customer. Will really didn't tell him that they also had a yellowfin tuna. Will on the side was also a little anxious. He was afraid that Kinzu didn't know the market price, but he wanted to remind him several times, but he didn't know how to start. After all, this company was introduced by himself. Ha, how could that be, Frank? I'm very satisfied with this price, really, I'll make you my friend. Awakened by the voice, Kinzu laughed and gave Frank a hug, patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "Ha, Clean, I'm honored." With a long sigh of relief, Frank also responded enthusiastically to Kinzu. No one would refuse the friendship of a billionaire. "Come on, I'll show you a big guy. This time we got a lot of real good stuff." After letting go of Frank, Kinzu said mysteriously. Then he took him to the seawater tank next to him. "I haven't left the house for a day during the May Day holiday. Today is the second update. Please subscribe and reward si estás escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a Mundo Fanfic Novelas, significa lo descarga and y subieron sin esfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo Fanfic Novelas all encontrarás la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 253. A small profit. Please subscribe and reward. Oh my god. This is yellowfin tuna, and it's alive, such a big yellowfin tuna. As soon as he entered the seawater tank, Frank was attracted by the yellowfin tuna in front of him, which was nearly 3 meters long and swimming fast in this huge seawater tank. Clean, you are really a darling favored by God. It's incredible that you can catch a yellowfin tuna here. I haven't seen this guy here for a long time. After a long time, Frank came back from his surprise and looked at the young man with complicated eyes. To be honest, he was a little jealous of Kinzu's luck. Ha, nothing, how about it? Name a price. Kinzu laughed and got straight to the point. Nonsense, my own luck, how can I not know what's wrong? After sorting out his thoughts, Frank regained his smile and said, Clean, you know the price of this kind of fish. There is a big difference between the price of the fish that is auctioned and the price of the fish that is alive and the price of the fish that is dead. I will call back and ask. After saying that, he shrugged helplessly. He really couldn't make up his mind. It was not because the amount was too large, but because it was difficult to set a price. Okay, you guys discuss it first. With a smile, he signaled Frank to do whatever he wanted. Kinzu came to the sea and carefully looked at this $1 million fish. To be honest, if it wasn't for the points, he really didn't plan to sell it. After all, he was a billionaire. It would be a shame for him if he couldn't enjoy the delicacies that the Japanese could enjoy. However, when he thought of the points, Kinzu still shook his head. Alas, it's not that I don't have money, but I have to make money. When he thought of money, Kinzu thought of a piece of news about yellowfin tuna that he had just seen on the internet. It is said that Japan's NHK TV station reported that in Tsuji Market, Tokyo, Japan's largest seafood market, a sushi restaurant bought a 222 kilograms tuna for 155 million yen, about 10 million yuan, breaking the highest price record last year and setting a new historical record. 10 million yuan, converted into US dollars, that's more than $1 million US. Even if my own can't sell for such a high price, it's not much worse, right? After all, although my own is not auctioned, it can't be said to be big. Kinzu estimates that this yellowfin tuna is at least 300 kilograms, and the most important thing is that it is still a live fish. Just as Kinzu was thinking about this, Frank's hearty laughter came from behind him again. Clean, it's like this. I just reported to the company. The board of directors of the company decided to buy your yellowfin tuna for 1.1 million US dollars. Oh? So quickly decided? Kinzu smiled non-committally, as if he didn't care about the price. But in his heart, he was not as calm as he appeared. Although Kinzu had expected this to happen, he was still a little dazed when he really heard their offer from Frank. $1,100,000, which is almost 10 million RMB. It's just a fish. Is this man crazy? Why, Clean, are you not satisfied? How about I call back and try to negotiate? Looking at Kinzu's expression, which was not fluctuating, Frank's confident expression was also a little stiff. Is he still not satisfied with this price? This is already close to the auction price. No. I am very satisfied, and your company is also very generous. So, let's make a happy decision. Kinzu came back to his senses and was a little speechless to himself. Why bother about him so much? They are all crazy, that's good, so that his fish can be sold at a higher price. Since the price has been negotiated, it's time to start unloading and weighing. Seeing the boxes of fish being unloaded from the fishing boat, Kinzu couldn't help but feel relieved. The points problem that had troubled him for a long time was finally solved. Clean, there are 15 tons of cod in total, with a total price of 195,000 US dollars, 8 tons of herring, with a total price of 64,000 US dollars. There are 6 tons of flathead fish, and the total price is 60,000 US dollars, based on an average price of 10 US dollars. There are 110 large lobsters, most of which are more than 2 kilograms, with a total price of 135,000 US dollars. There are also some various precious fish, which add up to 555,000 US dollars. Frank himself took a breath of cold air when he counted it. He heard Will say that these were just 2 nets. 2 nets, without the big guy, the 2 nets would earn more than 500,000 US dollars. What if he caught 2 nets every day? Thinking about it, he was a little horrified. This was really terrifying. Kinzu, who was secretly happy, didn't know Frank's little thoughts, otherwise he would definitely spit on his face. Do you really think that there are endless fish in the fishery? However, all this will not happen, because Kinzu can't read minds. Clean, will transfer the money to you. 1,655,000. We don't have that much cash. After all the fish were weighed, Frank came up with a helpless look on his face. No problem, you transfer 1,600,000 to me, and the remaining 55,000 to me in cash. Hearing what Frank said, Kinzu agreed without hesitation. These were just trivial matters. After confirming that the money had been received, Kinzu smiled and led Frank to catch the 3-meter-long yellowfin tuna. Hurry up, be careful, and immediately transport it back to the headquarters after loading it. Seeing Frank nervously scolding the crew members he brought with him, Kinzu couldn't help but laugh. It seemed that SYNOPSIS Seafood was preparing to transport this guy back to the headquarters for display. After Frank and several crew members packed up the last yellowfin tuna and took it away, Kinzu smiled and waved his hand, said goodbye to him, and then said loudly to Will and the others, "Let's go, guys, we're going to triumph." Immediately, several people cheered. After a busy day, they were finally going back, and the thing they were most looking forward to was about to happen. Sure enough, after the fishing boat left the port and began to sail smoothly, Kinzu shouted on the intercom in the captain's room, "Guys, assemble, go to get your money." Simon and the others were excited when they heard it. They looked at each other, washed their hands, and started to walk towards the captain's room. "Hey, Simon, what do you think? The boss has made so much money this time, how much bonus will he give?" Aiden is indeed a person who can't keep his mouth shut. In just a few dozen meters, he squeezed next to Simon and muttered in a low voice, "How would I know? But everyone should get $1,000. Although Simon said he didn't know at first, he began to guess later. $1,000 is equivalent to their weekly salary. He felt that if he could get such a reward from a trip to the sea, he would have met a generous boss. Really? If I could really get $1,000, I would be satisfied. Aiden's eyes were full of longing, but his tone was a little unconfident. You know, they haven't even worked for a month yet. If they can get such a big bonus in the first month of work, it would be God's blessing. Today is the third update, extra update for the Strong Protector, 11, Chapter 254 Steam Spicy or Garlic, subscribe and reward here, 10,000 each, take it. When several people came forward, Kinzu took out 4 stacks of green US dollars from his arms with a smile, and regardless of the sluggish expressions of the crowd, he stuffed a stack into each person's hand. Looking at the stack of green Franklin in his hand, Simon and the others were all confused. In the end, Simon was the first to react. He looked at Kinzu and asked with some stammering, This, boss, is it too much?" Although he said so, he held the stack of US dollars tightly in his hand, as if it would fly away with the wind if he let go. "Ha, not much, it's just a little thing. As long as you follow me and do things well, you'll definitely get some benefits." After saying that, Kinzu turned around and stuffed the remaining 15,000 US dollars in his hand directly to Will, saying, "Will, this is yours. You have to pay more attention to the fishery later." "I know, thank you, boss." Although the tone was flat, looking at Will's firm eyes, Kinzu smiled with satisfaction. "Boss, we will definitely work hard for the fishery." Simon and his friends looked at each other, and followed Will's example, expressing their loyalty with a firm face. Not long after Kinzu and his friends both left the dock, an explosive piece of news spread among the fishermen. "Hey, Wayne, do you know? Keen from the Tycoon Manor only cast 2 nets at sea and made $1.6 million US. On a 20-meter offshore trawler, a big man with a full beard said to his partner next to him with envy. "What? Where is the Tycoon Manor? Earn more than $1 million at sea. Where did they cast the nets?" The man named Wayne next to the big man was a young white man with bulging muscles. After hearing his companion's words, his face was full of disbelief. "You know, if they can make 10,000 or 20,000 US on a trip to the sea now, it means they are extremely lucky. Fishermen in the United States can only be regarded as middle class in the United States. After deducting the messy taxes and various expenses, there are very few who can make a net profit of 100,000 US in a year. Now, I suddenly heard that someone could make more than $1 million US in one trip to the sea. It's all fake to say that I'm not shocked. Do you know Hill Manor? It's the one in Revere. There is a big fishery. That fishery hasn't been open for fishing for several years. Of course there are a lot of good things." The white man with the full beard said as he took out a box of cigarettes, handed one to his companion, lit one himself, took a big puff, and continued. "These damn rich people are so rich. They don't go to New York to play finance, but come to steal our jobs. Yes, the catch in the near sea is getting less and less now. Sometimes you can't even earn back the fuel cost after going out. Alas." After hearing his companion's words, the young man named Wayne also sighed deeply, as if he had suffered a great injustice. Such conversations can be seen everywhere on the fishing boats around the fishing port. Kinzu and his Tycoon Manor plunged into the American seafood market in such a rude manner. After more than an hour of sailing, the Tycoon one slowly approached the dilapidated small dock of the ranch. When the fishing boat stopped, Kinzu said hello to a few people and got off the boat directly. In his hand, of course, he did not forget to pick up the dark green lobster with a body length of more than 80 centimeters. This is the one that Aiden caught in the sea. Kinzu, who had been greedy for a long time, still slipped it down. "Hey, Will, let's go, let's celebrate. When Kinzu walked away, Simon looked at her with excitement, waiting for his order, and then rushed to Revere's bar. Fortunately, Will did not disappoint him. He only heard him smile and said, "No problem, guys, pack up the fishing boat first, and everyone will go together in the evening. I'll treat you." Hearing what Will said, Aiden and the others who were packing the fishing nets suddenly burst into laughter. As soon as they returned to the villa, Daha and her came up wagging their short tails. However, when they saw the big guy in Kinzu's hand, they began to grin. They looked as if they wanted to come up and take a bite. They were in our territory, and they dared to be so arrogant. Kinzu smiled and pushed the two bored guys aside, and walked to the kitchen with the big lobster. When he arrived in the living room, Kinzu saw Zhu Mengyo lying on the sofa, watching TV lazily, and asked with a smile, "Mengyo, you're back. How is the case handled?" "Yes, it's handled. Your lawyer is really good." The police changed their attitude immediately when they saw him. Turning her eyes away from the TV, Zhu Mengyo looked at Kinzu with a smile. Today's scene really broadened her horizons. It turns out that lawyers are so important in the United States. That guy is one of the top 10 lawyers in the United States. How can he not be amazing? By the way, where is David? Didn't he come with you? No. As soon as the matter was settled, he returned to New York. It seems that something urgent happened. Hey, is this a lobster? So big? Did you go out to sea again? Before the voice fell, Zhu Mengyo saw the big guy in Kinzu's hand, and her face was immediately surprised. This is the first time she has seen such a big lobster. Yes, I went to cast 2 nets today. The harvest is not bad. This big lobster, I caught more than 100 in one net. Kinzu raised the big guy in his hand that was still waving his claws and teeth, and shook his head. David is really? After thinking for a while, Zhu Mengyo continued to lie on the sofa, like a little housewife, and said, "By the way, Mengyo, what do you like to eat, steamed, spicy or garlic? I'll make it for you today. All women love food and beautiful clothes." Zhu Mengyo's usual dress is ordinary. She is not the kind of girl who loves makeup and dressing up, but she is still interested in food. Hearing this, she immediately became interested. She stopped watching TV and walked to Kinzu's side with small steps. Looking at this big guy with bare teeth and claws, she thought for a long time before saying, "Just make it steamed." Such a big lobster, if it is made into anything else, it will destroy its original taste. Kinzu didn't care, of course, so he just steamed it, and it would save him trouble. By the way, where's Surui? Why didn't I see her? Oh, she went upstairs to take a shower. She ran all day today and sweated all over. Turning back to the sofa, Zhu Mengyo picked up Dudu who was staying next to her and answered casually. After hearing what Zhu Mengyo said, Kinzu realized that she was wearing pajamas. It turned out that she had already taken a shower. Chapter 255 An embarrassing scene. Please subscribe and reward. After putting the lobster in the kitchen, Kinzu sniffed it and stretched it over his body. Suddenly, a smell of the sea came to his nose. He shook his head and turned to walk upstairs. He was also going to go back to his room to take a shower first. When he arrived at the door of his room, Kinzu was a little strange. He seemed to remember that the door was open when he left. How could someone close it? But he didn't think much about it and just pushed the door and walked in. Just after passing the cloakroom, Kinzu was stunned and stood there. Hearing the sound of the door opening behind him, Surui smiled and asked, "Mengyo, you finished washing so quickly. Is Kinzu back? Can you help me keep an eye on him?" After the voice fell, Surui heard no movement behind her for a long time, and turned her head to look over with some doubts. In an instant, time seemed to be stopped. Ah! A shocking scream broke the dead silence, and Surui's fair face suddenly turned red. Flustered, Surui picked up her clothes from the side and covered her body. Looking at Kinzu who was still staring at her, Surui shouted in shame and anger. "Kinzu, have you seen enough?" "Ah, no, I've seen enough." Awakened from his trance by Surui's cry, Kinzu said something incoherent, and then ran out of the door in a panic. "Ah, what are you doing? What happened to Ruari?" As soon as he went out, he ran into Zhu Mengyo. Kinzu didn't say anything and ran downstairs quickly. Today was too exciting. He couldn't keep calm now. He just wanted to go back to the room to take a shower, but who knew he would run into this scene? "Ruari, what's wrong?" After entering the room, Zhu Mengyo looked at her best friend knowingly, and her heart was tangled. What was going on? When they came back, they all wanted to take a shower. After playing rock paper scissors, she went to take a shower first with a smug look on her face, while Surui went to another room. What she didn't expect was that she chose Kinzu's room by chance, and what she didn't expect was that Kinzu ran to the room as soon as he came back. The most important thing is that she was a little obsessed with watching TV and forgot all these things. Why didn't you notify me when he came back, and why didn't you stop him? Seeing Kinzu leave, Surui took off the covering, fell on the bed in a huff, and looked at Zumengyo with a wronged face. Didn't I know you were taking a shower here? Zumengyo smiled awkwardly, and felt that she was also wrong, but looking at Surui's expression that was about to cry, she comforted her helplessly. HMPH, who told you to neglect your duty and let that guy up here? See how I'm going to deal with you today. Pulling Zumengyo's hands apart rudely, Surui temporarily forgot her worries and looked at Zumengyo with a wicked smile. Where are you going to run to, you little brat? Don't be like this, he took advantage of you, go find him. Zumengyo, who couldn't stand Surui's trick, blushed and gave this crazy girl a white look. She was weak and angry. Kinzu waited downstairs for a long time, but the two girls didn't come down. He became even more uneasy. No way, he didn't mean to do that. Although, well, he did take advantage of them, but he didn't mean to do that. They were not discussing how to deal with him. After thinking for a long time without any clue, he looked at the time. It was already past 5 o'clock, so he got up and went to the kitchen to cook. Who cares? It's a blessing, not a curse. If it's a disaster, it can't be avoided. Boss, let me do it. At this time, Eva and Dale also came back from outside. They were busy harvesting hay recently. Whenever they were free, the two girls would run over to help. It's okay, you guys take a rest, I'll cook today. Seeing the two girls' tired looks, Kinzu forced a smile and let them go to rest. Hey, sister, what's wrong with the boss today? He seems to be weird. While walking to the living room, Eva secretly glanced at Kinzu and whispered to Dale beside her. Why bother so much, go take a shower quickly, you're all sweaty. Dale rolled her eyes at her gossip of sister and walked upstairs. Could it be that they're having sex with one man and two women upstairs? Hey. They can't all be with the boss. Returning to the room, Eva looked at her sister with some stammering, unable to finish her sentences. Although she lived in the West and was not so shy when talking about matters between men and women, this kind of sex right under her nose was still a big shock to her. What's so strange about this? Men, especially billionaires like the boss, have more open lives than him. I've seen many of them. The boss is already pretty good. While taking off her clothes and walking towards the bathroom, Dale smiled lightly and gave her sister a strong dose of medicine in her still innocent heart. A lot. The boss is already good? Muttering her sister's words, Eva walked towards her own room. In her originally innocent heart, a seed was planted by her sister, waiting for time to slowly take root and sprout. Today is the 5th update, extra updates for monthly tickets, chapter 256. Has the land been plowed? Ahem, well, Mengyo, I really didn't mean it. I just wanted to go back and take a shower. Seeing Zumengyo walking into the kitchen with a flushed face, Kinzu explained awkwardly. Okay, it's okay. I came to see if the meal is ready. I'm starving. She rolled her eyes at this guy charmingly. You did take advantage, but I was also taken advantage of by that crazy girl. It turned out that I was the victim in the end. It will be ready soon, it will be ready soon. Hearing that there was no anger in Zumengyo's tone, Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief and said hurriedly. After Kinzu slowly set up the table of delicacies, the two sisters Dale also came down from upstairs. Wow, such a big lobster. Kinzu, did you go out to sea today? Staring at the huge Boston lobster in the middle of the dining table and smelling the tempting aroma in the air, Surui looked at Kinzu with excitement. It was hard to tell that she had just been seen naked by the man in front of her. Yes, after going out to sea, the fishery must have some income, right? Kinzu looked at Surui with an embarrassed smile, and complained deeply in his heart, women, they are really good at acting. Come on, let's eat, it won't taste good if it gets cold. After sighing, Kinzu quickly asked everyone to sit down and eat. He didn't want to stay with a few women for a moment now, it was too embarrassing. You said that Surui and Zumengyo looked at him strangely, but the two sisters Eva opposite also looked at him strangely. Did they know something? A sumptuous dinner ended in this weird atmosphere. Except for Kinzu, the women were very satisfied with the meal. The deliciousness of the steamed lobster made Surui and Zumengyo's chopsticks never stop. As soon as the dinner was over, Kinzu ran upstairs in a hurry, leaving a few women to clean up the mess. He really couldn't stay here any longer. Those vague gazes were like needles, pricking his skin. After returning to his room, smelling the faint fragrance in the air, Kinzu's mind involuntarily reappeared the shocking scene. Shaking his head, Kinzu forced himself to get rid of these messy thoughts, picked up the bathrobe, and walked directly into the bathroom. Perhaps because of psychological reasons, Kinzu always felt that there was a special feminine smell in the bathroom that could not be driven away. After a hasty wash, Kinzu lay down on the bed and forced himself to fall asleep quickly. There was no way, the feeling of being able to see but not eat was too torturous. The next day, early in the morning, Kinzu was awakened by a ringing of his mobile phone. He had been dawdling for half the night yesterday, but he still couldn't fall asleep. In the end, he successfully entered his dream with the help of the fifth girl. "Hello, who is this?" Kinzu asked lazily, touching his mobile phone in a daze. "Boss, this is John. We can harvest the grass today. Do you think we can contact them to install a sprinkler system?" Kinzu slowly woke up from his daze after hearing John's hearty laughter on the phone. "Well, I'll contact you later. Hasn't the land in the ranch been turned over yet?" Kinzu felt something was wrong just after he agreed. How could the land not be turned over before sowing? Boss, it's already been turned over. We turned over the land while harvesting the grass." John on the other end of the phone looked at the endless black land in front of him and was a little puzzled. Didn't the boss come to see it? Until the phone was hung up, Kinzu was still in a state of confusion. Wouldn't this old man fool him? Even if some corners are not counted, there are 7,000 or 8,000 acres of pasture for sowing this time. How can the land be turned over so quickly? Kinzu quickly got up from the bed. He washed and changed his clothes in 5 minutes, then looked at himself in the mirror. He was indeed a handsome guy who had charmed thousands of girls. After a narcissistic moment, Kinzu went downstairs. To his surprise, there was no one there. There was only a warm breakfast on the milky white dining table. Where did these girls go? Kinzu muttered in confusion, picked up the sandwich on the table and took a big bite. Then he looked at Daha and Xiaohe who were spinning around his feet, tore off a small piece and handed it to them, scolding them with a smile. "You two guys can't stand watching others eat." After a simple breakfast, Kinzu took the two little guys out. He wanted to see the situation first. Although he knew that John would not lie to him, he was still a little worried. The blue sky was cloudless. Two raptors with metallic luster all over their bodies greeted Kinzu happily in mid-air after seeing him come out. Kinzu smiled and waved to the two guys, and walked to their stable with the two little followers behind him. Next to the stable, Xiaobai still held his horse's head high, leading his group of brothers, strolling leisurely in the tender green grass. The distance from the stable to the villa is not very far, and it is not in the grazing area, so although the grass here is also rich, it is not within the scope of the replacement. So Kinzu rode Xiaobai and past the stable, looking at the endless black soil turned over by the rotary tiller. The astonishment can be imagined. Go driving Xiaobai, Kinzu slowly went deeper inside, and finally found John and his group who were doing the final finishing work in the depths of the pasture. "Oh, my friend, you did a great job. Can you tell me how you completed such a difficult task in such a short time?" Kinzu couldn't help his curiosity when he saw John. After praising him loudly for a few times, he asked the question he was concerned about. "You know, turning the soil is not like harvesting grass. The reason why grass can be harvested so quickly is that the harvester is equipped with a huge reel in front, which is as wide as a 3 or 4-tailed truck. Walking all the way, there is a nearly 10-meter wide open space. But if you turn the soil, it is impossible to have such a large rotary tiller." He really couldn't think of how to turn such a large piece of land in such a short time. Boss, look at what that is." Hearing Kinzu's question, John pointed to a silver-white behemoth working in the distance and asked with a smile. It's so big, what is that?" Looking at the steel monster in the distance that was a circle larger than the Ford 750, Kinzu was a little surprised. "What the hell is this thing?" Chapter 257 Contract. Wait. Kinzu rubbed his eyes vigorously. That's right. The steel giant painted with white paint is indeed plowing the land. Looking at the 12 or 13-meter long rotary tiller towed behind the white steel giant, Kinzu's mouth slowly opened wider and wider. Is this a rotary tiller?" "Yes. Boss, this is the rotary tiller we rented in Revere. I told you about it, right?" Looking at Kinzu's dumbfounded look, John was very confused. Isn't it just a bigger rotary tiller? Is there any need to make such a fuss? Yes, okay, I'll call Ernst and ask them to come and install the sprinkler system. After staring at the white steel giant for a long time, Kinzu took out his mobile phone and called Ernst. After Ernst on the other end of the phone patted his chest and promised to come within an hour, Kinzu hung up the phone. After thinking about it, Ernst would definitely have to sign a contract when he came over, so Kinzu called Jefferson again. After he said it was okay, he put away his phone. Driving the white horse under his crotch, Kinzu slowly walked towards the exaggeratedly large steel behemoth. He was very interested in such a big thing. The first thing that caught Kinzu's eyes was the 8 huge tires in the front and back rows. Kinzu couldn't describe how huge it was, but he was only a few centimeters away from the tire when riding on the horse. Boss, this is the largest tractor in Revere. It belongs to a large farmer on the other side. However, there is not much work on the farm after all. In his spare time, he will rent this big guy to others. Of course, the rent is not cheap. Seeing that Kinzu was interested in this big guy, John walked up and introduced it to Kinzu with a smile. Nodding, Kinzu indicated that he understood. After chatting with Will for a few words, he rode the white horse away from here. He was shocked. I was really shocked. It was not until today that he realized what mechanized farming was. He just asked John that it only took about 1 minute for this steel behemoth to cultivate 1 acre. In other words, in just one day, this big guy can cultivate thousands of acres of land. Alas, this is the gap. Shaking his head, thinking back to the tools used to farm in his hometown, Kinzu sighed helplessly. There was still about an hour before Ons came over, and Kinzu decided to go to the warehouse first to soak the seeds. This time he did not go to draw water bucket by bucket, but went to the warehouse of the villa, found a water pipe, and pulled it into the warehouse. While looking for the water pipe, Kinzu looked at the living room. Zhu Mengyo was still not there. Where did these 2 girls go? Hey, Mengyo, where are you? Kinzu, who was not very reassured, took out his mobile phone and called her. We're shopping. The people from the law firm are going back today, so Suruli decided to take them around Boston. Glancing at Suruli, who was walking around with a group of employees, Zhu Mengyo smiled helplessly. It seemed that her best friend still cared about that matter. She wanted to say hello to Kinzu before she left, but Kinzu didn't get up, and then she was dragged to Boston by Surui. Oh, okay, then you guys should be careful. Is Dale with you? Kinzu breathed a sigh of relief when he heard the 2 girls were shopping. After thinking about it, Dale was not there, so he asked. Yes, the 4 of us are together, and Eva is here too. Well, Kinzu touched his nose. It seemed that he had left himself alone at home, but it was better this way, so as to avoid embarrassment. Kinzu lined up 50 red leather barrels one by one and began to fill them with water. Then he unpacked the seeds and poured them all in. It looked simple. It was just adding water and pouring a few bags of seeds. But when everything was ready, more than half an hour had passed. After opening the system interface, Kinzu directly found the spiritual energy liquid and began to exchange it. The total income from selling fish was $1.655 million. According to the calculation of $10 per point, that is 165,500 points. Looking at the balance of points, Kinzu almost drooled. When did points become so easy to earn? However, he counted the spiritual energy liquid he was going to exchange. Kinzu's heart began to twitch again. 1 drop of 1,000 points, Kinzu exchanged 50 drops first. 50,000 points were consumed in one go. Silently closing the system panel, Kinzu reminded himself in his heart that these were all floating clouds. Yes, these were all floating clouds. After Kinzu put 50 green crystals into the barrel one by one, he clapped his hands. This was considered a temporary end. Just before Kinzu could walk out of the warehouse, the phone in his pocket rang. Kinzu took it out and saw that it was from Once. Mr. Clean, I'm already at the door of your villa. Look. Well, I'll be there right away. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu carefully locked the door of the warehouse, and then turned and walked towards the villa. Before reaching the door, Kinzu saw more than a dozen long trailers parked in front of the villa. There were all kinds of machinery and materials piled on them, making people a little worried that it would suddenly fall down. Once, what are you doing? From a distance, Kinzu saw Once coming over. After shaking his hand with him, he pointed to the big truck behind him with some confusion. "Oh, Mr. Clean, these are the equipment for installing the sprinkler system. Since your place is quite large, I brought them all here at once." With a sheepish smile, Once explained a little embarrassedly. Nodding without saying anything more, he took Once and a middle-aged white man behind him to the villa. As soon as he entered the villa, the phone in his pocket rang again. Kinzu picked it up and looked at it, then smiled and said, "Just in time, my lawyer is here." After letting Jefferson come in by himself, Kinzu asked the two to sit down on the sofa in the living room. "Boss, I'm not late, am I?" Just as the few of them sat down, Jefferson ran in a little out of breath. It took him more than an hour to get there in 50 minutes. "Ha, it's not too late. You've worked hard. Come and sit down." Motioning Jefferson to sit down, Kinzu looked at Once opposite him and said with a smile, "Okay, we're all old friends, so I won't waste time. Bring me the contract." Reaching out to take the contract from his backpack, Once handed it to Kinzu with both hands, and complimented him with a smile. "Mr. Keen is a straightforward person. It is an honor for our company to cooperate with you." Chapter 258 Chain Mu. Kinzu took the contract and handed it to Jefferson next to him, then chatted with Once casually. Jefferson looked at the contract very seriously, and discussed something with the middle-aged white man next to Once from time to time. At this time, Kinzu realized that this middle-aged white man was also a lawyer. After studying it for more than an hour, Jefferson smiled and nodded at Kinzu. Kinzu took the contract and signed his name on it. This meant that a full $24 million would leave Kinzu again. Taking the contract signed by Kinzu with excitement on his face, Once stood up and said in an excited voice, "Mr. Clean, we promise to install the sprinkler system within a week." Looking at this guy in surprise, Kinzu smiled and nodded. Of course, the sooner the better. Since the matter has been settled, several people got up and said goodbye together. As for the lawyer's fees, they will be paid monthly. After everyone left, Kinzu stood up, stretched his waist, looked at Dadu lying motionless on the sofa, smiled and poked its chubby body with his fingers. Dadu opened his little eyes confusedly, moved reluctantly, and went back to sleep. Alas, a family of lazybugs. With a sigh, Kinzu nestled back into the sofa. Now he just had to wait for the seeds in the warehouse to be ready, and then everything would be fine. A whole morning passed in boredom. During this time, Kinzu entered the warehouse to exchange 2 batches of seeds, which meant that his 110,000 points were reduced to only 15,500. Hey, why haven't these girls come back yet? Lying on the sofa, Kinzu touched his empty stomach, and glanced at the 2 hungry and listless little guys, feeling very depressed. "Mengyo, are you coming back for lunch?" After calling Zhu Mengyo, Kinzu pretended to be concerned and asked. "No, we're having lunch with the employees. You can get something to eat by yourself. By the way, don't forget Dadu and Laha." After that, she hung up the phone with a sweet laugh without waiting for Kinzu to react. "Alas, your mother doesn't want you anymore, so you can just starve." Kinzu sighed helplessly after poking at Dadu, who was curled up on the sofa. There was no other way. Eva was not there, so he had to go to the kitchen to cook. Perhaps seeing Kinzu go to the kitchen, Daha and Xiaohe, who were lying listlessly on the side, immediately became energetic. They quickly wagged their little tails, picked up their food bowls, and followed. Little Jerry was chewing a big apple on the sofa, looking at the 2 huskies with disdain. "Look at what you have done. But they don't care what you think. They only ate some dry food in the morning. Aren't you going to give them meat at noon? Are you going to let the dogs live?" When he got to the kitchen, Kinzu took out a large piece of beef from the refrigerator, put it in the pot to drain it, and then cut off a small half and put it directly into the food bowls of Daha and Xiaohe. Now Kinzu has begun to feed the 2 guys some half-cooked beef. If they keep feeding cooked food, they may not be able to hunt by then. As for the remaining beef, Kinzu washed a few garlic cloves, went to the vegetable garden to pick a few green and red peppers, cut them into strips, and put them together to stir-fry green pepper beef. After the vegetables were cooked, Kinzu put them in a large bowl, then added some noodles with clean water and a little salt. When the noodles were cooked, he directly put them into the large bowl and ate them. While eating his homemade noodles, looking at the pitiful Dadu on the sofa, Kinzu had to pick up another carrot, cut it into pieces, and put it in its small food bowl. Seeing that there was food, the little guy didn't pretend to be pitiful anymore, and jumped off the sofa and ran towards the food bowl. Daha and Xiaohe next to him looked up at the guy's food bowl, and then they had no interest anymore, and started to eat their beef. Kinzu received a call from John just after lunch. Boss, they have started to install the sprinkler system, and we can start sowing seeds. Well, go to the warehouse and get it. There are seeds in the white bags piled in the corner. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu couldn't help but secretly rejoice. Fortunately, he just made it in time. He had already prepared 172 cubic meters of seeds in the warehouse, which was almost enough. But looking at his points, Kinzu began to scratch his head again. How come they were gone again? It was really useless. Just as he was thinking about it, the cell phone in his pocket suddenly rang. He took it out and looked at it. It was a local number, but Kinzu didn't recognize it. However, after hesitating for a moment, he still picked up the phone. After all, not many people knew his number. Hello, I'm Keen. Hi, Keen, hello, I'm Joseph from Rose Ranch. He suddenly sat up from the sofa, and the word uncle almost came out of his mouth. The voice from the other side of the phone scared Kinzu a lot. Ahem, it's Joseph, what's the matter? Forcing down his heart that was beating a little fast, Kinzu asked with a stammer, feeling a little uneasy at the same time. Could it be that the truth has been revealed and now the old man is here to call for punishment? Ha, Keen, didn't I hear that all the forage grass in your home has been replaced with new varieties? I just want to ask if you can sell me some of the old forage grass. You know, with this damn drought this year, I don't have enough forage grass at home. Although Joseph on the other end of the phone was a little surprised by Kinzu's strange tone, he didn't care. He was worried now. Although he didn't raise many cows, who told him to love horses? He had quite a few horses at home. When I was talking to my daughter on the phone yesterday, I accidentally talked about Kinzu's recent hot topic. Only then did I know that he was going to change to new forage grass. At the time, my heart moved, and that's why I made this call today. Oh, about this matter, of course there is no problem. When you are free, just come and get it yourself. Hearing that they just needed some hay, Kinzu heaved a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with his hand. He almost asked directly how much you want and I would ask someone to send it to you. Thank you so much. I'll be there in a minute. Hearing that Kinzu agreed, Joseph hung up the phone excitedly and said to a Chinese youth sitting next to him with a smile, Chen Mu, you came at the right time today. Come with me to get some hay. Without hay, my lovely horses will be short of food. Oh, master, are we going to the home of the youngest director in Pingo? The young man named Chen Mu asked curiously. He has admired this legendary figure for a long time. P.S. Chen Mu, a Dharma protector, I don't know how to be strong. I just rely on my perseverance. A friendly appearance. Chapter 259 Meritage Restaurant. Just when Kinzu was browsing Twitter boredly, the sound of a car engine shutting down suddenly came from the door of the villa. Woof woof woof. Before Kinzu had time to go out to see, he heard the crisp barking of Daha and Xiaohe. Hey, little guy, don't be naughty. Looking at the two pure white little huskies in front of him barking at the two of them, Joseph not only showed no fear, but also tried to reach out and touch the furry heads of the two little guys. Daha and her cleverly dodged the big hand, and they immediately refused to do it. What, I don't show you some power, you still look down on puppies. Okay, Daha, come back. Daha, who was about to rush up to give the guy in front of him a bite, heard the call from his owner, and immediately retracted his head in a bit of resentment, and ran to the corner with his brother who was also a little bit resentful to find Dudu to amuse him. Ha, Joseph, I haven't seen you for a few days. You look younger. Kinzu smiled and stretched out his hand to shake hands with his future father-in-law. He threw out those nice words as if they were free. Clean, you are too polite. Come, let me introduce you to a friend. Joseph was a little confused by Kinzu's polite words. He didn't wake up until he shook hands with Kinzu. He smiled and introduced the Chinese young man next to him to Kinzu. Clean, this is my former apprentice, Chen Mu, who is now the chef in Meritage Restaurant. The chef at Meritage Restaurant? Kinzu muttered in surprise, and carefully looked at the handsome young Chinese in front of him. He was about 35 or 36 years old, about 1.85 meters tall. His pace, manners, demeanor and generosity were as outstanding and eye-catching as a prince. Although he was wearing a casual outfit of unknown brand, it couldn't cover up his natural radiance. His eyes were focused and sharp, and it was almost impossible to look directly at him. There was always a faint smile on his mature and handsome face, especially his sharp eyes, which seemed to be able to see through your inner secrets. The more he looked, the more surprised Kinzu was. What is Meritage Restaurant? Maybe he didn't know before coming to the United States, but since he came to Boston, he began to pay attention to the news here consciously. Meritage Restaurant is one of the only 3 Michelin 3-star restaurants in Boston. To be able to be the chef here at such a young age, especially as a Chinese, his ability is obvious. Mr. Chen, I didn't expect that he would be the chef at Meritage Restaurant at such a young age. His future is really limitless. Reaching out his hand and shaking hands with the Chinese named Chen Mu in front of him, Qin Zhu exclaimed sincerely. Mr. Clean, you're joking. You're already the chairman of the Pingo Board of Directors at such a young age. This is really a young and promising person. He smiled gently. When Qin Zhu looked at him, he was also looking at Qin Zhu. Seeing that this young man who was more than 10 years younger than him could become a member of the Pingo Board of Directors at this time, it would be a lie to say that he was not envious and disappointed. Okay, Clean, let's go get some hay first, Joseph next to him interrupted the two people's greetings helplessly. This was what he disliked the most. He had to talk a lot of nonsense when he saw someone. In his opinion, this was a waste of life. Okay, by the way, Joseph, do you want fresh or bundled ones? There are already bundled ones in the warehouse. Just as he was about to take Joseph to the warehouse, he suddenly remembered that the seeds were still soaking in it, and immediately asked nervously. At the same time, he prayed in his heart that he must not choose hay, otherwise it would be difficult to explain when a few people asked about it later, especially with a Chinese person present, and he couldn't fool them. Let's go get some fresh grass, I'll go back and dry it myself. To Qin Zhu's surprise, Joseph didn't even think about it and chose fresh grass. But what he didn't know was that Joseph was cursing him in his heart at the moment. This was a waste of money. It's only been a few days, and you've already bundled the grass. If it's not completely dried, it will easily go bad. But this was exactly what he wanted, so Joseph drove the car, took Qin Zhu and Chen Mu, and went deep into the pasture together. Because they were here to get grass today, Joseph drove a Dodge 550. When Qin Zhu bought the car, the sales manager introduced it to him and said it was at the same level as the Ford 750. Now sitting in this behemoth, Qin Zhu felt it and it seemed to be really similar. Whether it was shock absorption or the ability to climb and cross country, the two are just on par. On the way, when passing the grazing area, Chen Mu's eyes, which had always been calm, suddenly lit up. Mr. Clean, excuse me, what kind of Angus cattle do you raise in your ranch? Chen Mu looked at the mutant Angus cattle in the distance, nibbling on the grass, and asked excitedly. They are just ordinary breeds. He looked at this guy in surprise. Could it be that he could recognize these mutant Angus cattle? Hey, Clean, it's been a short time since we last met, and the Angus cattle here are so big. It seems that John, the old guy, has not given up on raising cattle. Hearing the conversation between the two, Joseph, who was driving, glanced at them lightly, and then smiled and praised John, as if everything was John's credit. In fact, it's not Joseph's fault that he had such a preconceived impression. After all, it would be weird for a young man of 23 or 24 years old who had never raised cattle to attribute such a credit to him. However, this was exactly what Qin Zhu wanted, so he also smiled and agreed. Yes, thanks to John for helping me, otherwise I really don't know how to take care of this big ranch by myself. Just when Qin Zhu wanted to end this topic, Chen Mu, who was standing beside him, seemed to be deliberately against him, and asked, Well, Mr. Clean, I wonder when your cattle are going to be sold. Well, probably in the first half of next year at the earliest. What's the matter? He looked at the chef named Chen Mu in confusion. Do you want to buy my beef? Don't look at it, Clean, that's what he means. This guy doesn't miss any good ingredients. Seeing the confusion on Qin Zhu's face through the review mirror, Joseph, who was driving, laughed and explained to him, and then continued to ask with a smile. By the way, Clean, you don't know why I need so much forage, right? I don't know, isn't it for feeding horses? Shaking his head, Qin Zhu said he didn't know, and was a little speechless in his heart. This guy was still keeping him in suspense. It's this guy who insisted that I raise some cows on the ranch to provide meat for their restaurant. He doesn't even have the patience to understand my old bones. At the end of his words, Joseph sighed, as if he was helpless towards the guy. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sinisfuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Tesperamars paras emerged on un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 260 Chain Mew's ambition. Master, there is nothing we can do about it. You raise the best cattle. You know, our restaurant has very strict requirements for ingredients. Chain Mew, who was standing by, heard what Joseph said and quickly smiled and complimented him. It seemed that Joseph was very proud of being praised for his cattle-raising skills. When Chain Mew said this, Joseph immediately became very excited and drove very fast. In the blink of an eye, he passed the grazing area. The grazing area was almost over, and this was not the place to talk about things. Chain Mew took advantage of Joseph still talking about his great achievements when he was young, and quietly handed over a business card, and then made a phone call gesture, indicating that he would talk about it later. Soon, the car arrived at the last finishing point smoothly under Joseph's superb skills. Looking at the pile of fresh grass on the ground that had just been harvested today and had not yet been bundled and transported back to the warehouse, Kinzu smiled and asked, "Joseph, is this enough? If not, there is more in the warehouse." "Enough, I don't need too much." Nodding hurriedly, Joseph turned around and got on the trailer, drove a forklift down from it, and followed Chain Mew to collect the grass. Now Kinzu couldn't stand on the side. If he really had to collect the grass by himself, Mobika would blame him to death if she knew about it in the future. He quickly reached out and called a few temporary workers to come up and help. After that, Kinzu also drove a forklift and helped Joseph put the grass on the trailer. "Hey, Clean, you are too polite, I can do it myself." Seeing that Kinzu came down to help, Joseph shouted a little embarrassedly. It's okay, we are neighbors, it will be faster if we help together." Hearing Joseph's shout, Kinzu laughed, and then helped to work quickly. Chain Mew, who was listening to the conversation between the two, secretly admired them in his heart. No wonder he was so rich at such a young age. He was so good at dealing with people. As the saying goes, many hands make light work. With the help of several people, a large trailer was filled up in less than half an hour, and the trailer that came over could not fit in. "Thank you so much, Clean, you are such a good person." On the way back, Joseph gave Kinzu a thumbs up and praised him sincerely. Don't say that, we are all neighbors, and we should help each other, right? Kinzu blushed a little after being praised by Joseph. He quickly raised his hand and said modestly, while muttering in his heart, "If you knew that I had done that to your daughter, I wonder if you would still praise me as a good person." Thinking about it, Kinzu felt that it was a little unlikely. If Joseph knew about their concern, he would probably praise him with an axe. When he arrived at the gate of the villa, Kinzu was about to get out of the car when he was stopped by Joseph. "Clean, how much is this, hey? I'll write you a check." In Kinzu's somewhat confused look, Joseph smiled and took out the checkbook from his pocket. No, Joseph, this is your fault. I treat you as a friend. I will help you like this if I treat you as a good neighbor. Besides, this is the leftover from my crop change. You helped me deal with this garbage. I can't thank you enough." Kinzu quickly waved his hand and found a lot of reasons to reject Joseph's proposal. What a joke, just a truckload of hay, at most a few $1,000s, how could he accept it? In the end, after pushing and shoving for a long time, Joseph couldn't convince Kinzu. After talking and talking, he almost got himself into trouble. "Okay, Clean, I accept your kindness. I will definitely come to my house when I have time." Shrugging helplessly, Joseph formally raised his hands in surrender. "No problem, I will definitely go when I have time." Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Kinzu complained in his heart that this push and pull was not a job that a human could do. "Well, I will definitely go back, and take your daughter with me." Looking up at Joseph's back as he drove away in the Dodge, Kinzu silently added another sentence in his heart. On the way, Joseph looked at Chain Mew, who seemed a little worried, and sighed in his heart. He saw that Chain Mew was hard-working and willing to endure hardships, so he did not care about the racial differences and accepted this Chinese as his successor. And he did not disappoint his expectations. At the age of youth, he achieved the achievements he had been striving for all his life. However, now he is a little ambitious. Chain Mew, if you want to continue to expand the operation of the restaurant, have a good chat with Keen. He has such a good ranch, which can fully implement your plan. As if seeing through Chain Mew's thoughts, Joseph whispered to him. Chain Mew looked at his master in astonishment. He was a little surprised. Sure enough, the old ginger is still spicy. He didn't even open his mouth, and he knew his purpose. Let's not talk about the conversation between Chain Mew and his apprentice. Qin Zhu, who had just entered the villa, rubbed his sore arm, took out Chain Mew's business card from his pocket, and looked at the phone number on it, lost in thought. It would be best if the beef could be supplied directly to the local Western restaurant, because then the value of the beef could be sold at the highest level. But the requirements of the Western restaurant are also the highest. Can the beef from his own ranch reach that standard? Qin Zhu was also a little nervous. After thinking for a long time, he couldn't figure it out. Qin Zhu shook his head and decided not to think about it anymore. It's too early to think about it now. The calves in the ranch have just grown up, and he won't sell those mutant Angus cattle. After all, if they're sold, there will be one less, and he still needs to rely on them for breeding. Squeak, woo. Woof woof woof. Just as he was thinking about it, Qin Zhu suddenly heard a sharp cry and a few painful barks from the side. What's wrong? What's wrong? Qin Zhu, who was startled, quickly stood up from the sofa. He ran to the guys. At this time, Dadu was shivering all over and huddled in the corner, while Daha held his head with his little paws, whimpering in pain. Xiaohe retreated far away and kept barking at Dadu, which scared the already trembling Dadu and huddled in the corner. Okay. Stop barking. He reached out and gently patted Xiaohe's little head. Xiaohe immediately stopped talking obediently, but he still stayed away from Dadu, as if this harmless little rabbit was so scary. What's wrong? Okay, stop barking. Let me see. When he came to Daha and saw that it was barking in pain, Qin Zhu quickly reached out and stroked its back. At the same time, he slowly put his other hand on Dadu's trembling little body and gently comforted it. When Xiao slowly calmed down, Qin Zhu finally had time to go and see what happened to Daha. He stretched out his hands and pulled open the two little paws that were covering Daha's face. Qin Zhu was stunned. He saw that there were several red scratches on Daha's pink little nose. Chapter 261 Rabbit Kicks Cedar. Well, little guy, what did you do? Qin Zhu was a little puzzled, looking back and forth at Daha and Dadu. What was going on? Could it be Dadu who did it? Looking at Dadu's powerful hind legs, Qin Zhu immediately thought of a famous phrase, rabbit kicks cedar. Sure enough, Qin Zhu looked carefully and saw that the wound seemed to be kicked by the rabbit's hind legs. You deserve it, you tease me. Qin Zhu, who was not sure whether to laugh or cry, slapped Daha's chubby little butt, making Daha, who was already aggrieved, whimper and express dissatisfaction. There was no way. Qin Zhu had to comfort him gently again. He knew that this guy must have teased the little rabbit again and made him angry. As the saying goes, rabbits bite when they are angry. I can knock down an eagle, not to mention that you, a little guy, teased me at such a close distance. Qin Zhu picked up Daha and looked at it carefully. Fortunately, there were only a few red marks, and the skin was not broken. He was relieved. Holding Daha in one hand and Dadu hiding in the corner in the other hand, Qin Zhu returned to the sofa. Listen, Daha, you and your brother are not allowed to bully Dadu in the future, do you hear me? Qin Zhu pointed at Dadu and scolded Daha in a very stern tone. Only after it understood what he meant did Qin Zhu put it on the ground and let it go out to play by itself. Squeak, squeak. Jerry over there probably saw the scene of Daha being knocked over by someone, and he kept grinning and squeaking, making Daha laugh so hard that he couldn't even lift his tail. Just at this time, the roar of Night the 15th came from the door. After a while, Zhu Mengyu and Surui came in with big bags, followed by Eva. Seeing Zhu Mengyu walking towards the living room, Qin Zhu's eyes lit up. Today, she was still wearing a delicate suit, but under her short skirt, she wore a pair of flesh-colored stockings, which made her look more shiny. She also put on a little light makeup today, and with her long black hair casually scattered in front of her head, she looked like a perfect workplace beauty. Are you back? Are you tired from shopping? After Zhu Mengyu sat on the sofa, Qin Zhu slowly approached her and asked with a caring look. Tired, so tired, Rui wants to continue shopping, really doesn't want people to live. Kicked off the high heels on her feet neatly, Zhu Mengyu curled up and nestled in the sofa, obviously very tired. Ah, I'm tired too. It's you said you wanted to buy something for someone, and you walked around again and again. Surui, who followed in later, was unhappy when she heard it. Why didn't you say you were tired when you were shopping, but started complaining when you came back? Looking up at Surui, Qin Zhu was stunned. What a bold outfit. It was just a tight royal blue dress. The hem of the dress barely covered her thighs. Qin Zhu was even sure that if she moved a little more, she would definitely be exposed. As if she had noticed Kinzu's fiery gaze, Surui glared at him fiercely, then squeezed to the other side of Zumengyo, and quickly picked up the pillow and hugged it to her chest. Why blame me? It's obviously you. You went shopping here and there, tried on more than a dozen sets of clothes but didn't buy anything. I think the salesperson wanted to wheat you. Zumengyo pouted and weakly retorted. She wanted to sleep now. Well, isn't it that their clothes are not good looking? By the way, Kinzu, where is my dadu? When talking about this, Surui suddenly became a little depressed. Can I blame you if it's not good looking? So they quickly changed the subject, not wanting to hurt each other anymore. Yes, here. He picked up dadu and handed it to Surui. During this time, Kinzu even saw a touch of white through the gauze of the dress. Hey, what's wrong with it? Did you bully it? Seeing Dadu's listless appearance, Surui looked at Kinzu with murderous intent in her eyes. It wasn't me, it was the dog that bullied it. No, it was Daha. Seeing Surui's cute and fierce appearance, Kinzu quickly distanced himself from her. What's wrong? Why did Daha bully Dadu? Is he okay? Hearing that Dadu was bullied, even Zumengyo, who looked exhausted and lying on the sofa with her eyes closed, forced herself to cheer up, sat up and looked at Dadu in Surui's hand, showing great concern. Seeing that things were not going well, Kinzu quickly betrayed Daha, waved his hand to call the reluctant Daha over, and Kinzu told her what happened. There is such a thing. The two girls were also a little dumbfounded. Seeing Daha's miserable appearance, Zumengyo's maternal love suddenly overflowed. She hugged Daha and comforted him in her arms. However, it was Kinzu's turn to be dumbfounded. No, the plot shouldn't be like this. Looking at Daha lying comfortably in Zumengyo's arms, Kinzu was envious and jealous, especially this guy, who didn't know if it was intentional, and his little head kept twisting. It was obvious that he was taking advantage of him. Little guy, you wait for me, and see how I will deal with you later. After glaring at this guy fiercely, Kinzu decided to deal with him slowly in the future. It seemed that Daha, who was in Zumengyo's arms, felt so wronged. He was hugged too tightly by this woman and couldn't breathe. As a result, he was not allowed to move. This was really trying to kill him. Fortunately, perhaps it was not destined to die. Zumengyo seemed to realize that she was holding it uncomfortable, so she changed her position in time, and finally saved Daha from being suffocated to death. Seeing that the two girls were in a state of overflowing maternal love, and it was still in a state of continuous cycle, Kinzu quickly changed the subject and asked, By the way, Mengyo, have all the people from your law firm gone back? Yes, they have all gone back, but we still have to stay here, and the case will have to be heard again later, and then it can be closed. After recovering from the overflowing maternal love, Zumengyo looked at Kinzu and continued with a smile. What do you think? You don't welcome us to live here, do you? Of course not, I wish you could live here every day. Shaking her head quickly, Kinzu expressed a warm welcome for them to stay here. Chapter 262. Building a pier. The next morning, Kinzu was awakened by the somewhat urgent ringing of his cell phone. He picked up the phone in a daze and answered it without even looking at it. He said lazily, Hello, this is Keen. Boss, this is John. A construction company came to the ranch and said they were here to build a dock. John on the other end of the phone looked at the people around him and was very confused. Didn't the boss always ask Ivan Construction? Why did he change people this time? Is it because they didn't do something well? No, it seems that I have to go back to supervise. Oh, you can ask them to come directly to the villa. I'll wait for them at the villa. Hearing that it was the construction team, Kinzu woke up a little, yawned and got up quickly. After going to the bathroom to wash up, he changed his clothes and went downstairs. The construction team that came today was recommended by Douglas, and their projects were basically contracted to them. As for why they didn't ask us, I'm sorry, they were too busy. The main reason was that Kinzu's request was a bit urgent, and they really didn't know how to build a dock like this. That's right, building a pier. The only meaningful thing Kinzu did in the past few days was to find a company to build a pier. When he came downstairs, John was already waiting in the living room with 2 men and 1 woman. Seeing Kinzu coming down, John stood up first. He introduced, Boss, these people are from Doug Industrial Construction Company. Then he introduced Kinzu's identity to those people. Nodding at them, Kinzu smiled bitterly in his heart. Well, no wonder Douglas recommended it so much, it turned out to be his own family. Hello, Mr. Clean, I am Stanley from Doug Construction, This is our company's chief designer Simmons, and his assistant Miss Sammy. After hearing John's introduction, the middle-aged white man who led the group quickly stood up and introduced himself, and at the same time, he did not forget to introduce his companions around him. After shaking hands with several people again, Kinzu motioned for them to sit down, then he asked with a smile, "Have you brought your design drawings? Has Douglas told you about my requirements?" "Please rest assured, Mr. Clean, the design drawings have been brought, and Mr. Simmons is the best designer of our duck construction. He is also a famous designer in the whole United States." Seeing the distrust in Kinzu's eyes, Stanley patted his chest and assured Kinzu. At the same time, he asked, "I wonder what kind of dock Mr. Keen is going to build? What kind of boats will it be used for parking?" "Well, it's going to be used to park fishing boats." "What kind of docks are there?" Kinzu didn't have the habit of pretending to know, and he didn't, and asked directly what he didn't understand. "That's right, Mr. Keen. Generally, there are 3 options for building a dock. One is a gravity dock. It relies on the weight of the building and the weight of the filler within the structure to maintain stability. The structure has good integrity, is strong and durable, and is easy to repair after damage. It has integral masonry and prefabricated assembly types, and is suitable for better foundations. The advantages of this type of dock are that it is strong and durable, and easy to repair after damage. However, the cost is relatively high." After speaking, seeing Kinzu nod slightly, he continued, "The other is a high pile dock. It consists of foundation piles and superstructures. The lower part of the pile is driven into the soil, and the upper part is high above the water. The superstructure includes beam slab type, beamless large slab type, frame type, and pedestal type. The high pile dock is a permeable structure. Waves and water flow can pass below the dock plane. It does not reflect the waves, does not affect flood discharge, and can reduce siltation. It is suitable for soft soil foundations. In recent years, long piles and large span structures have been widely used, and large pre-stressed concrete pipe columns or steel pipe columns have gradually replaced piles with smaller cross-sections to form pipe column docks. The advantage of this type of dock is that it is relatively cheap, but it is not as durable as the gravity dock, and it is troublesome to maintain after all." "What is the other type?" Seeing that Stanley did not say anything after talking about the 2 types, Kinzu asked curiously. "There is also a sheet pile dock, which is composed of sheet pile walls and anchor facilities, and uses sheet piles and anchor facilities to bear the ground use load and the lateral pressure generated by the backfill behind the wall. The advantages of this type of dock are simple structure and fast construction speed. It can be used except for extremely hard or too soft foundations. But its disadvantage is also obvious, that is, the overall structure and durability are poor." Stanley shook his head slightly. Obviously, he did not recommend this type of dock. When introducing it, it was just a professional habit. He could introduce it like this to others, but he thought it was better to tell the truth to his boss's friends. After hearing Stanley's introduction, Kinzu thought about it for a long time. He had basically never considered the sheet pile dock. Since it was built, it must be a better one. The only hesitation now is whether to use a high pile dock or a gravity dock. Logically speaking, according to Stanley's introduction and combined with the current situation, the first choice must be a high pile dock. And Stanley introduced the most, it was also a high pile dock. Obviously, he also felt that the high pile dock was suitable for Kinzu at present. Because in his opinion, it was just a fishery, and it was a bit of a waste to build a gravity dock. However, Kinzu's idea was different from his. In his imagination, the development of the fishery must be a blowout. So, in Stanley's surprise, Kinzu smiled and said, "Just build a gravity type, you give me a design and budget." Okay, but we have to go to the site to investigate first." After stuttering and agreeing, Stanley took the designer and his assistant, followed by John, to investigate the terrain. "Kinzu, are you going to build a dock? You spend so much money, can you earn it back?" After several people went out, Zumengyo, who was teasing Dudu on the other side, said to Kinzu with some concern, "She has been here for so long, and she has never seen Kinzu make money, but he really spends a lot of money. Grass seeds, sprinkler systems, and now a dock. In just a few days, tens of millions of dollars have been spent. If converted into RMB, it would be more than 100 million. This is not the way to spend money. Ha, don't worry, why would I open a ranch if I can't recover the cost? It's better to do nothing and wait for death. He smiled and gently scratched Zhu Mengyo's cute little nose, and when she was about to explode, he changed the subject. Mengyo, do you know how much I earned from my trip to the sea the day before yesterday? How much? Sure enough, just as Qin guessed, Zhu Mengyo's attention was diverted. Chapter 263 Gravity Dog 1,600,000. Qin showed off proudly with his mouth slightly raised. His expression was just like a child who longed for praise from his parents. Renminbi? Zhu Mengyo asked in surprise, slightly opening her mouth. Dollar. The arc of her mouth became bigger and bigger, and Qin seemed to have seen the naked admiration in Zhu Mengyo's eyes. Earn more than $1 million in one trip to the sea? Are you dreaming? To Qin's surprise, Zhu Mengyo not only did not show the admiration he imagined, but instead looked at him with an expression of looking at an idiot, and even bent down and tested his forehead with her hand. Qin opened Zhu Mengyo's novel in a bad mood, and said with a smile, I don't have a fever, what I said is true, 2 nets of fish, sold for $1.65 million. Staring at Qin's eyes for a long time, Zhu Mengyo said doubtfully, really sold for $1.65 million? What kind of fish are you selling so expensively? Helplessly, Qin had to explain the situation of the day to her in detail, and Zhu Mengyo was relieved. However, she reacted and said, you just got an unexpected gain. If there is no unexpected gain, I wonder when you can earn back your capital. Looking at her worried face, Qin felt a little warm in his heart. At least he liked the feeling of being cared for. Just when the two were discussing heatedly, Qin's mobile phone on the table rang again. He picked it up and saw that it was Will's call. Will, what's wrong? Boss, are you going to build a pier? Qin smiled at Will's voice full of doubt and joy. Why? Is it not possible? Do you still want to keep the old pier? No, of course not, but the location of this new pier is a bit troublesome. Shaking his head, Will didn't care whether Qin could see it or not, and quickly waved his hand to reject this bad proposal. However, when it comes to the location of the pier, he hesitated again. What's wrong? Is there any difficulty in choosing a location? Qin immediately became anxious when he heard Will say there was a difficulty. Now everything is ready, only the east wind is missing, so don't let anything go wrong. No, it's just that the coastline of the manor is almost all daving beaches. If you want to build a pier, the water depth is not enough, so the location of the old pier is more suitable. As he said. Will hesitated. In this case, the old pier would have to be completely demolished, which is also a big project. Hearing what Will said, Qin hesitated a little. After all, it was something left by Mr. Hill. But after thinking about it, he gritted his teeth and said, then tear down the old dock for me, and send the fishing boats to Boston for temporary berthing. Wait until the new dock is built and then drive them back. Okay, then I'll tell them to plan on the original site. Will hung up the phone and ran towards the people who were pointing and talking around the dock. What's wrong? Are you going to tear down the dock? Zhu Mengyo, who was standing by, didn't quite understand and asked curiously. Well, build a new dock on the basis of the old dock. Qin seemed to remember something and asked, where is Surui? I haven't seen her since the morning. Isn't that normal? Hearing Qin's exaggerated words, Zhu Mengyo couldn't help but burst out laughing and said coquettishly, if she's so lively? She went to Boston early in the morning and had some things to deal with there. She nodded in realization, and he said, if she was at home, she should have heard her voice a long time ago. After a while, Stanley came in with a designer named Simmons, smiling. Mr. Clean, you are very lucky. The location of the high-pile dock in your ranch is a good deep-water port. Oh, so there is no other place to build it? Qin asked with interest. He really wanted to know what he would say as a construction company. No, Mr. Clean, there is no place that cannot be built, it's just whether it is suitable or not. In other places, the gravity dock can be extended 500 meters, but the cost is too terrible. He looked at Stanley in surprise. This guy is quibbling with words for him. Okay, then tell me your construction plan and quotation. Rubbing his head, Qin felt a little overwhelmed. It was really like what Zhu Mengyo said, this money was too easy to spend. After hesitating for a while, Stanley still quoted their price. Looking at Qin, he said cautiously, it's like this, Mr. Clean, for this gravity dock, I wonder how many meters you plan to extend into the sea? Because if you build a gravity dock, within 100 meters, if you extend 1 meter into the sea, it will cost about $30,000 US. Hiss, Qin took a breath and gritted his teeth. $30,000 US for 1 meter, is this using US dollars to build a dog? As if seeing Clean's surprise, Stanley quickly explained. Mr. Clean, because the gravity dock is made of sand, gravel and reinforced concrete, it is indeed made of dollars. Okay, then, how many meters do you think it should be built? And how many tonnage ships can it dock? Rubbing his temples, Clean's felt a little overwhelmed. He hadn't considered how many meters to build. Well, because the old dock is a high pile dock of nearly 100 meters, if we don't extend it far enough into the sea. Stanley stopped talking halfway through his words. Even if it was not enough, Clean's understood what he meant. Okay, then extend it 100 meters into the sea. However, I want to know, what size ship can it dock at most? Is 10,000 tons okay? After thinking for a while, Stanley said with certainty. Mr. Clean, after the dock is built, we will indicate in the design that it can only dock ships of about 8,000 tons. At this point, Stanley paused slightly, then looked at Clean's slowly getting ugly expression, and quickly continued. However, it is of course okay to dock a giant ship of 10,000 tons, but because the design and construction of a 10,000-ton dock belongs to a commercial dock, and 8,000 tons is still for civilian use, so. I see, as long as it can dock, it's fine. I guess with doublers here, you won't brag, right? Clean's glanced at Stanley with a smile, and after a little threat, he asked again. When can you start construction? How long will it take to complete it? It can start within 2 days, and as for the construction period, it should be completed within 2 months. After thinking about it, Stanley said seriously. Thank you Fenxi for your reward and support. Thank you. Chapter 264 Prelude. After agreeing to sign the contract 2 days later, Stanley took the designer back. From beginning to end, the designer named Simmons did not speak. In the afternoon, Surui came back from Boston. As soon as she entered the door, she began to sigh. Rui, what's wrong? Zumengyo, who was watching an American TV series with a cup of coffee, looked at her bestie's expression and asked curiously. Kinzu, who was training Daha and Xiaohe on the side, couldn't help but prick up his ears. Hey, Tongton called just now and asked us to go back after we are done here. Surui said weakly, lying on the soft leather sofa. Ah, you were going back so soon? Putting down the coffee cup in her hand, Zumengyo seemed a little reluctant. Life here is too leisurely. Every day, she basks in the sun, blows the sea breeze, and occasionally goes fishing. Thinking about it, she fell into a kind of beautiful memory and couldn't extricate herself. Go back? When? Hearing that they were going back, Kinzu didn't bother to train the 2 little huskies. He threw the chewing bone in his hand to them and sent them to play by themselves. Just for 1 or 2 days, the case has been closed today. Surui sighed again. She really didn't play enough, but her best friend called her and she felt embarrassed not to go back. Kinzu couldn't sit still after hearing that. There was no progress yet, so why did they have to go back? He quickly said, well, don't you stay a few more days? There are still many fun things to do. What else? Surui asked listlessly after hearing that. For example, camping, shooting fish, and, as he was talking, Kinzu couldn't say anything more, as if there was really nothing fun on the ranch. Apart from riding horses, fishing and hunting, he really didn't know what fun there was. Even shooting fish was something he had only heard John mention by chance. Hey, camping. Where to camp? After hearing Kinzu talking about camping, Surui immediately became interested. After turning over on the sofa, she faced Kinzu. She was lively by nature and was very enthusiastic about this kind of outdoor activities. Ahem, it's in the mountain range behind. Kinzu glanced at Surui's collar that was open because of turning over, and quickly looked away. At the same time, he sighed deeply in his heart, it's so big and so white. Raise your hand to the mountain range. Will there be wild beasts? Not noticing Kinzu's abnormality, Surui tapped her chin lightly with her hand, turned her head to look at Zumengyo on the side, and asked. Yo, what do you think? How about we go camping today? Ah? What? Camping? At this time, Zumengyo woke up from her thoughts. After hearing Surui's words, she seemed a little confused. Kinzu said to go camping, what do you think? Do you want to go? She rolled her eyes helplessly at her best friend, and Surui had to repeat it helplessly. Okay, when? Where are we going to camp? He nodded indifferently. He was about to go back anyway, so it might as well go out and have some fun. Kinzu was almost crying when he heard this. What was going on? Why did it sound more and more wrong? How did things get to this point? Wait, let me sort things out first. Rubbing his head, Kinzu began to recall what had just happened. They were about to go back, and he tried to keep them, saying that there were still many fun things they hadn't played yet. There was nothing wrong with that. Then, Tsurugi asked what activities there were, and she said camping, and she happily agreed. There was nothing wrong with that either. But, what the hell were we going for today? We're going camping and then going back. Yes, we're going camping today, and then we're going back tomorrow. You won't disagree, will you? Tsurugi seemed to have seen Kinzu's dilemma, so she smiled cunningly, and then pretended to look at him pitifully. How could it be? I agree. Embarrassedly shifting his gaze, Kinzu swore that he was definitely not tempted by the whiteness. Well, definitely not. Looking at Kinzu's strange expression and movements, Tsurugi lowered her head and looked at herself, and suddenly, 2 blushes flew across her originally fair cheeks. After giving this guy a charming look, Tsurugi quickly sat up straight and stretched out her hand to tug at her clothes. Ahem, since we are going camping, let's get ready. I'll call Dale to come back with us. Seeing Tsurugi staring at him, Kinzu quickly changed the subject, but in his heart, he felt extremely wronged. I've pretended to be a gentleman, isn't that enough? It seems that I'll take advantage of it next time. Anyway, whether I take advantage or not, I'll be blamed. What about the ranch after we all leave? Aren't they still installing the sprinkler system? Seeing Kinzu being instigated by Tsurugi to leave soon, Zumengyo asked with some concern. It's okay, I'll make a phone call to take care of it. Anyway, Johnny's watching over it, and I'm just a hands-off boss. Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu felt that he was also very irresponsible. He had been at the ranch for more than a month, and he couldn't stand it anymore. However, who made him the boss? Besides, the ranch and the fishery were developing steadily. What else could he do? He took out his mobile phone and called John. After a few words, Kinzu hung up the phone after John patted his chest and assured him that there would be no problem. Well, I told you, there will be absolutely no problem with John here. Kinzu smiled proudly at Zumengyo, and felt that he should give John a raise. It's his misfortune to have a boss like you. Zumengyo curled her lips and really felt that Kinzu didn't behave like a rancher at all. Kinzu chuckled and ignored Zumengyo's teasing. After calling Dale over, the others packed up. He still carried a Remington, while Dale changed to an M1 Garand improved semi-automatic rifle, which was very famous in World War II. As for the 2 girls, they also carried guns. Tsurugi, like Kinzu, took a fancy to the shotgun at first sight, so she carried a Remington. Zumengyo didn't want to take it at first, but seeing that everyone else took it, she also took an improved Lee Enfield from Kinzu's collection. As for where Kinzu got the collection, it was for Wanming and the others. Not everyone can play in the gun shop in the United States, so Kinzu had to go and buy himself a few new guns. Moreover, he brought back several boxes of bullets alone, which made the clerk look at him strangely, thinking that this billionaire was scared by the last time the mob attacked the manor. After getting the weapon, Kinzu led everyone directly to the depths of the ranch. Thanks to Goddy's 123 for the reward and support. Chapter 265 Entering the Mountain Cry. Woof woof woof. The blue sky was cloudless. It was hard to tell that it had just experienced a heavy rain 2 days ago. 2 huge raptors with a wingspan of 3.5 meters and distinct black and white bodies were flying freely in the boundless blue sky. Under the bright sunlight, they seemed to be shining, making it difficult to look directly at them. On the bare pasture, a group of 4 fully armed people were riding on tall horses, followed by 2 little huskies chasing and playing with each other, slowly heading towards the mountain range deep in the pasture. Looking at the harpy eagles flying freely above his head, Kinzu felt that his eyes seemed a little blurry. Why did he feel that these 2 guys had grown up a lot? Just as he was wondering, a pleasant and familiar female voice suddenly came to his ears, breaking his meditation. Kinzu, what do you think is on the mountain? Will there be tigers? Zumengyo, who was riding on Shiabai, was very curious. The mountains were very mysterious to children like them who grew up in the city. Yes, I heard there are wolves and black bears in the mountains. With just a few of us, will we be in danger? Tsurugi only then remembered the safety issue and became a little nervous. It should be okay, right? However, when we came in last time, we encountered a big python. Fortunately, we ran fast. Kinzu rubbed his nose and was interrupted from thinking. He thought it would be better to scare them so that they would not run around. As for the big python, Ha! He chose another way this time. Ah? Big python? Didn't it attack you? As soon as they heard about the big python, the two women immediately pulled the reins and looked at Kinzu in surprise. Well, yes, we saw the traces of it and ran away in advance. Kinzu nodded very affirmatively, indicating that what he said was true. Then we won't go. It's too dangerous. Turning her head to look at Tsurui on the side, Zumengyu asked weakly. Go, why not? Why are you afraid of a python? If it comes, I'll shoot it to death. To their surprise, Tsurui was not afraid when she heard the snake, but patted the Remington shotgun behind her, looking very excited. Kinzu, who was choked by Tsurui, rolled his eyes helplessly and continued towards the entrance of the mountain with the two girls. After passing through several small woods and climbing over several small mounds, they finally arrived at the foot of the mountain. Wow, this mountain range is so big. When Tsurui looked at the rolling mountains up close, she really realized what a mountain was. Yes, the small hills in the tourist areas I visited before are just small mounds compared to the mountains in front of me. Zumengyu on the side also echoed repeatedly. Looking at the lush green mountains in front of her, she felt as if her soul had been cleansed. Let's go in. When you get used to it, it will all feel the same. Kinzu shrugged helplessly. He was shocked only the first time, but it was just the same afterwards. After that, he told Dale to stay behind. Kinzu straightened his backpack and led Daha and Xiaohe forward. The backpack was filled with some necessary camping supplies, such as tents, sleeping bags, and some pots and pans. Although it was a big bag full, it was nothing to Kinzu. Moreover, he had already put some heavier things into his backpack. The two women behind him also had small backpacks on their backs, but they didn't have much stuff there. Except for some of their own necessities, there was nothing else. Some of the heavier things were on Kinzu and Dale. There was no other way, because one of them was a man and the other was a bodyguard. The path in front of them seemed to have been walked by someone before, and a narrow path was pressed out, which was just wide enough for one person to pass through. Kinzu let the two little guys lead the way, and left the horses nearby to graze. On the contrary, with Xiaobai around, there was no need to worry about not finding them. Holding a machete in case of emergency, Kinzu followed the two little huskies with a very serious attitude and opened the way in front. At this time, the little guys seemed particularly serious, without any playful behavior. They walked cautiously in front, and their pink little noses kept sniffing everywhere. It seems that these two guys have grown up unconsciously. Looking at the little husky that was almost 30 centimeters tall, Kinzu was very satisfied. If it grows up a little more, it will be no problem to fight the grey wolf alone. After walking less than a kilometer with a few people, the trees began to become dense, and the bright sunshine in the sky could only occasionally shine in through the gaps between the branches. At this time, the small animals around them also began to appear slowly. From time to time, rabbits flashed past the few people, causing the two little guys, Daha and Xiaohe, to bark angrily. This was a naked provocation. Kinzu also wanted to test the hunting ability of the two guys, so when a pheasant was disturbed by the few people and kept flapping its wings away, he hurriedly shouted from behind, "Hey, two little guys, did you see it? Hurry up and catch it." Daha could understand what Kinzu meant. Almost as soon as Kinzu gave the order, it jumped out. Although Xiaohe's reaction was a little slow, when he saw his brother attacking, he pounced on him without giving in. "How is it? Are you tired? Let's wait for the two little guys." Turning his head to look at Zumengyu, who was a little out of breath, Kinzu smiled and handed over a bottle of mineral water. Reaching out to take the mineral water, Zumengyu gently twisted it open and took a sip, then calmed down her accelerated heartbeat, and said with a smile, it's okay, it's just that I haven't walked such a long distance for a long time, and I'm not used to it. Don't get me wrong, it's just that my heartbeat is a little accelerated because I'm tired, but I don't have any thoughts about someone. Biased guy, where's mine?" Tsurui, who was next to her, waited for a long time but didn't see Kinzu give her mineral water, and couldn't help but feel a little dissatisfied. Didn't you bring it yourself?" Embarrassed, rubbing his nose, Kinzu quickly took another bottle from behind and handed it to her. Looking at her bulging backpack, he thought she brought it herself. As a result, after taking a big gulp of mineral water, Tsurui said a little embarrassedly, "It can't fit, so I didn't bring it." In fact, what she wanted to say was that seeing that he had brought so much, she simply didn't bring it, and it just so happened that her backpack couldn't fit it either. What did you bring?" Kinzu was a little dumbfounded when he heard that. Your backpack looks quite big, so you shouldn't say you didn't bring anything. Chapter 266 Pale Golden Shadow Whitening Lotion, Concealer, Skincare Lotion, Facial Cleanser, Toothpaste, Toothbrush, Towel, Cup. Listening to Surui counting the things in the backpack one by one with her fingers, Kinzu had the urge to faint. How could this be a camping trip? Ahem, Mingyo, what about you? You didn't bring these things too, did you? Looking at Zumengyo's backpack, Kinzu looked at her hopefully, hoping that she could give him some surprises. No. Looking at Kinzu's smile that bloomed like a chrysanthemum, Zumengyo continued. I didn't bring whitening lotion. I can't help it. I'm naturally beautiful. As she said that, she playfully stuck out her tongue, which made Kinzu want to pounce on her and take a bite. Oh, okay. Sighing weakly and rubbing the smile that was frozen on his face, Kinzu decided not to discuss this topic anymore. Anyway, what he brought was almost enough. Woof woof woof, cluck. Cluck. While they were chatting, there was a clear barking of dogs and the pheasant's terrified clucking in the distance. Kinzu and his friends looked up and saw that Daha and Xiaohe had successfully surrounded the pheasant and were constantly attacking. The two little guys cooperated very well, one in front and the other in the back. After a chaotic fight, they finally knocked the pheasant to the ground. As Daha lowered his head, blood splattered everywhere, and the forest slowly returned to peace. Boss, these two little guys are really good. After watching the two little guys hunting, Dale, who had been silent all the time, rarely expressed his opinion. Yes, these two guys are really amazing. Hearing Dale's words, before Kinzu had time to speak, Zumengyo on a side echoed. Then the three girls started to discuss this topic continuously, which made Kinzu on the side stunned. Even Daha didn't notice when he came back with the pheasant in his mouth. When did these women become so familiar with each other? Seeing Dale responding to the two girls' topics from time to time, Kinzu felt a little dizzy. Could it be that because he had picked them up and dropped them off twice, they were familiar with each other? Woof woof woof, Daha barked at Kinzu a few times in dissatisfaction. Daha put the pheasant down and wagged his tail waiting for his master's praise. Not bad, well done. Awakened by Daha, Kinzu squatted down and touched the heads of the two little guys. At the same time, he took out some beef jerky from his backpack as a reward for them. After the two guys stepped forward to continue to open the way, Kinzu interrupted the whispers of the girls and said, let's go a little further and find a place to camp. Leading the way in front, Kinzu was muttering in his heart, could it be that the charm of these two girls is so great that they can attract both men and women? How come Dale, who has always been aloof, has become so enthusiastic? After walking for a while, the trees in front of them became a little sparse, and the sun was shining on the ground again, which seemed particularly bright. Walking in the sunny woods, Kinzu felt relaxed. With the gentle breeze, if there was a recliner under the tree and a chess set, what a wonderful life it would be. Fortunately, the women behind him didn't know what Kinzu was thinking at this time, otherwise they would think that this guy was crazy. He didn't enjoy his youth and envied the life of retired people. Hey, listen, what's that sound? Kinzu, who was walking, suddenly heard a slight sound in his ears. He stopped and waited for the three women behind him to come up. Is this the sound of running water? It was Dale who reacted first. After all, she was a special forces soldier. It was okay for her to live alone in the hot jungle, let alone this small mountain range. It seems so. Is there a stream ahead? Looking ahead curiously, Zumengyo seemed particularly happy. A river meant that they could set up camp nearby. This was the experience gained from the discussion with Dale just now. Kinzu also thought it should be a stream. Although he didn't know which source and direction, since there was a stream, he would set up camp nearby. However, before that, he still had to confirm whether it was a mountain stream. With a few people, Kinzu quickly walked towards the direction where the sound came from. Within 2 minutes, a mountain stream about 5 or 6 meters wide appeared in front of everyone. The stream water was clear and looked to the bottom. It seemed to be more than 1 meter deep. Kinzu raised his eyes and looked upstream of the mountain stream, but he could only see the endless mountains, and he couldn't see the end at a glance. Looking downstream again, Kinzu was even more depressed. The mountain stream turned a corner not far ahead, and he couldn't see the end at a glance. At this time, besides the mountain stream, there were several reindeer who were drinking water leisurely with their heads down. Although they heard the sounds made by Kinzu and his companions, they did not mean to run away. They just looked up at them and then continued to drink water. looking at the reindeer not far away that looked like horses but not horses, deer but not deer, donkeys but not donkeys, and hooves like cows but not cows, Qinzhou was amazed. It was indeed a world full of wonders. He knew that reindeer, commonly known as four-beast in China, also called horned deer, was a rare animal. Because its head was like a horse but not a horse, its horns were like deer but not deer, its body was like a donkey but not donkey, and its hooves were like cows but not cows, it was named four-beast. It has a gentle temperament, is suitable for living in cold areas, likes to eat moss, and is good at walking in deep mountains, dense forests, swamps or deep snow. Wow, is that a four-beast? Yo-yo, help me take a photo. With a low exclamation, Surui quickly pulled Zumengyu and carefully approached the reindeer. It's okay, Rui, you can approach it boldly, it won't run away. As if seeing the caution in Surui's eyes, Dale on the side kindly reminded her that there are many such deer here, and not many people will hunt them, so they are not very afraid of humans. Really? She looked at Zumengyu with some doubt, but they still chose to believe it. So the two girls stood up and walked towards the reindeer drinking water. Sure enough, as the two girls approached, the reindeer just raised their heads and looked at them curiously, and did not mean to run away. Quick, help me take a few pictures. Walking to the side of the reindeer and squatting down to pose, Surui urged Zumengyu to hurry up, fearing that the guys would run away if they were late. After telling Dale to keep an eye on the two girls, Qinzhou walked along the mountain stream upstream. He also had to choose a suitable place to set up camp. Although he was not an expert in these things, he was an experienced person after all, and he was much more reliable than a few women. After walking for a while, Qinzhou found a suitable place. It was a grassland not far upstream. There were no low bushes around the grassland, so there was no danger of being attacked by wild beasts from the bushes. The surrounding trees were not very tall and were sparse, revealing a large area of sky. The sunlight can also shine in well, and it is very suitable for large birds to take off and land. In addition, it is not far from the water source, the altitude is not bad, and the view is very open. Well, this is it. Qinzhou muttered to himself and turned around and walked back. What he didn't notice was that after he turned around, a light golden shadow flashed above a towering tree not far away. Thanks to Feng Xiai and 10-years-old Worm for their support. Thank you. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en cines fuerzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontrar la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas increíbles. Chapter 267. Danger approaching. Are you ready? Let's go. Qinzhou greeted the others from a distance, holding the pheasant, and said hello to Daha and Xiaohe, and then walked towards the open space in front. As soon as he took out the tent, Zumengyu came over with Surui, who was smiling with satisfaction. Qinzhou, do you want my help? When she came to Qinzhou, Zumengyu put her hands behind her back and watched Qinzhou busy with interest. She felt that he was still quite handsome when he was serious. No, it will be done in a while. She smiled. Qinzhou didn't know what she was thinking, otherwise she would definitely complain about injustice. What does it mean to be handsome when you are serious? You should always be handsome, okay? After the tents were set up, Qinzhou smiled and asked, how about it? Do you want to go hunting? Okay. Let's go. Surui was the first to agree when she heard that they were going to go hunting. After looking at Zumengyu and finding that she nodded indifferently, Qinzhou took the others, found a direction at random, and led the way. Surui took off the remington from behind and held it in her hand, and quickly followed Qinzhou. Let's go too. Dale nodded at Zumengyu and loaded the M1 Garand in his hand with a click. Following the two little guys into the forest, Qinzhou suddenly felt an inexplicable palpitation, as if something bad was going to happen. However, looking at the two little huskies who were not abnormal, Qinzhou felt that he was worrying too much. Although the huskies were small, they were better than many Huns in predicting some dangers. After walking a few steps, the big husky found a slight movement in the bushes ahead. He stopped immediately and signaled to the little husky next to him, and the two little guys quietly surrounded him. Woof woof woof, the crisp barking of dogs resounded throughout the forest. In that crisp barking, there was also a hint of joy and a faint deterrence. As the dogs barked, a half-grown wild boar suddenly emerged from the bushes. After instantly breaking through the defenses of the two huskies, it ran away. Da hectares, come back. Seeing that Da Hectus was a little angry and wanted to chase, Kinzu quickly called them back. Let's not talk about whether these two little guys can beat the little wild boar. Even if they can, what will they do if they meet the mother pig? This kind of little guy usually doesn't act alone. There must be a big wild boar around it. Thinking of this, Kinzu's heart was relieved. He thought he had found the reason for the sudden palpitations just now. As for the reason, of course it was a big wild boar. You know, for a wild boar, even if you have a gun in your hand, it is not certain who will live and who will die. Sure enough, before Kinzu finished sighing, a few humming sounds came from not far away in the forest. As the sound came from far away, a huge female wild boar with 2 or 3 piglets slowly walked over from a distance. Oh my god. Kinzu, can we beat such a big wild boar? Yes, yes. Wild boars are very powerful. When this big guy appeared in front of everyone, Zumengyo and Surui took a breath of cold air. This big guy in front of them was more than 2 meters long. Judging from the head, it must weigh more than 500 kilograms. And the long black hair all over the body stood up like steel needles, which looked very deterrent. But what made the two women relieved was that this guy seemed to be injured and limped when walking. In this way, the wild boar's greatest skill, wild collision, was temporarily unusable. Boss, you step back first, leave this to me. Dale walked forward a few steps and motioned Kinzu to go to the back to protect the two women, and leave this wild boar to her. Comparing the difference in strength between the two, Kinzu was very depressed. It seemed that he was not sure that he could kill it with one blow. If he was hit by it, his good life would be ruined. So Kinzu only thought about it for 2 seconds, and then he took his gun and switched positions with Dale. The Remington in his hand was taken by Dale. Close-range headshots are still easy for this guy. And the big wild boar seemed to have noticed that the enemy on the opposite side had suddenly changed. After a moment of hesitation, it slowly stopped. Why doesn't it come up? Kinzu behind him was so anxious that he jumped up and down. Why did you rush over without caring when I was there? You just changed the person and you're scared. It seems that Kinzu's contempt worked, or maybe this guy was ready to attack. Anyway, as soon as Kinzu's idea fell, this big black guy rushed towards Kinzu. Just when Zumengyo screamed in fear and Surui's legs and feet were weak in fear, Dale raised the Remington in his hand calmly. Boom. 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 When the wild boar was about to enter the range, Dale suddenly pulled the trigger. With 3 fierce gunshots, she slowly retracted her hand holding the gun. On the opposite side, a black big guy, as if someone had shot his head, fell to the ground with a bang, splashing countless dust. Wow, so handsome. Looking at Dale with a little obsession, Surui's heart was slowly regretting and excited. She regretted, of course, not touching the gun herself, and excited, of course, she was able to escape death. Although she didn't know whether this big guy was a threat to Kinzu, it was better to have one less. Oh my god, it's really heavy. Slowly walking forward, Kinzu stretched out his hand to pull the big guy, but he really couldn't move it. Boss, this one is enough, right? Smiling and returning the Remington to Kinzu, Dale asked calmly, as if the bloody scene in front of her was not taken by her. Well, it must be enough. Let's go and find a way to get it back. Rubbing his hands, Kinzu didn't expect to run into a big guy not far away. Not to mention these few people, 10 or 8 more would be enough to eat. He and Dale carried the dead big guy with great effort. Zumengyo and Surui drove the 3 little guys behind them, and they returned to the camp together. However, as soon as they arrived at the camp, Kinzu was a little worried. This big guy was not easy to deal with. After thinking about it, he called Dale over again. Kinzu was going to carry this big guy to the mountain stream to clean it up, so as not to attract other large beasts with the bloody smell. Kinzu, what should we do at these little piglets? Zumengyo drove the 3 little guys, feeling a little helpless. These guys were too disobedient. Fortunately, Daha and Xiaohe were there to help, otherwise they really couldn't handle this matter. Let's build a fence to keep them in, and take them with us when we go back, and we can feed them ourselves. Scratching his head, Kinzu didn't have any good ideas. Let them go. He couldn't bear to do that. Kill them? That would be too wasteful. Okay, this is the only way. Zumengyo thought about it and felt that this was feasible, so she drove the little guys back to the camp. Dale, you go ahead and I'll go find some branches to make a fence. Kinzu smiled and said hello to Dale, then walked back with Zumengyo. As soon as they returned to the camp, Qinzu's heart beat a few times involuntarily, and Daha and Xiaohe beside him whimpered uneasily, as if something scary was approaching. Thank you Fengxiai for the reward. Thank you. Chapter 268. Giant Python Attack. Qinzu's heart tightened, and he could not help but tighten the remington on his back. Just when he was about to call Dale over, he felt a gust of wind blowing by. When he looked up, his mind went blank, and even his legs became weak. Oh my god, what the hell is this? Suddenly, a golden python appeared in front of the three people. The body of the python was 5 or 6 meters long. The thumb-sized scales on its body shone brightly under the sunlight as if they were made of gold. And its sturdy body, according to Qinzu's estimation, was thicker than an adult's thigh. The whole python looked extremely ferocious. At this time, the giant python coiled its huge body, and held its huge head high. Its copper bell-like eyes were also looking at the three people with a fierce look, or rather, at the group of wild boars in front of the three people. Ah! A scream of extreme fear came from the mouths of the two women beside him. Surui and Zhu Mengyo looked at the giant python in front of them, and their bodies suddenly froze there, their legs trembling. The huge scream not only woke Qinzu up from his shock. It also attracted the attention of the giant python on the opposite side. The giant python on the opposite side curled up, as if it was suddenly enraged. The huge python head shrank, and it rushed towards the three people like a sharp blade. Woof woof woof, with a few hoarse-dog barks, Qinzu even forgot to take the gun. He only had time to push the two women beside him to the side, and then he felt his waist was instantly entangled by a huge force, and then he flew directly into the air. Ah! Qinzu! Dale, come here quickly. The two women who fell to the ground saw the giant python rolling Qinzu and running deep into the forest. They were immediately shot and became incoherent. What? What happened? Where's the boss? Dale, who rushed over after hearing the noise, looked at the mess on the ground and had a bad feeling in his heart. Quick, Qinzu was taken away by a python. The two girls, who finally recovered from the shock, were not as panicked as expected. They quickly picked up their guns and explained to Dale while quickly chasing into the distance. Call the police first, be careful. After saying this hurriedly, Dale picked up his M1 and exchanged it with Surui's Remington. Then, in the astonished eyes of the two girls, he disappeared quickly into the depths of the forest like a tiger out of a cage. After looking at each other, Zhu Mengyo quickly took out a mobile phone to call the police, and told the story with a tearful voice. At this time, the Revere Police Department was in an uproar. What did you say? The rancher was taken away by a python? Stella looked at the operator in front of her with a blank face. Are you sure it's not an April Fool's joke? Oh, although it's not April Fool's Day now. Yes, Director, we just received a call from a Chinese, saying that the rancher's friend was camping on the mountain next to the ranch, and suddenly a golden python appeared and swept the rancher away. The female operator looked at the director's serious expression and stuttered. Fuck, then why are you still standing there? Hurry up and notify the special brigade to send out a helicopter, go. Stella, who had reacted, stood up suddenly, cursed angrily, grabbed the police hat next to him, and rushed out of the office. Just 10 minutes later, 2 black police helicopters, as if their butts were on fire, roared to the sky above the mountains. After finding the two women according to the location, more than a dozen fully armed American soldiers slid down along the road like dumplings. And where is Qinzu at this time? Where is he? The moment he was rolled up by the giant python, Qinzu felt that the surrounding scenery was rapidly retreating. His whole body seemed to be floating in the clouds, and he felt that his internal organs were like being grabbed by someone's hand, and they were about to burst. Along the way, the giant python kept changing its position, and its huge body directly crushed some bushes and small trees, leaving a deep snake path in the forest. Enduring the pain in his body, Qinzu opened the system panel, quickly found the pet capture technique, and began to cast it on the fast-moving giant python. However, after casting more than a dozen capture techniques in a row, it was like a drop in the ocean, and it had no effect at all. On the contrary, because of the frequent mental interference, the giant python became more furious. Just when Qinzu was about to despair and was ready to close his eyes and wait for death, a gunshot suddenly rang out behind him. This dull gunshot sounded so pleasant to Qinzu's ears that even the running giant python couldn't help but pause. Unfortunately, the shot did not hit the python because of the distance, and it frightened the guy and made him pause for a moment. Just as Qinzu was looking at Dale running towards him with hope, the python sped up again, made a sharp turn, and swam quickly to the other side. Moreover, the python seemed to be much smarter this time. It did not just keep crushing the python, but kept swimming among the trees, crossing the stream from time to time, and the distance between it and Dale behind it was getting farther and farther. "Fuck, damn guy, don't let me catch you." Dale, who was following closely behind the python, punched the big tree next to him hard. The huge force made the pine tree, which was 50 years old, rustle. "Go. Go." At this moment, she heard a faint military command behind her. It turned out that it was her gunshot that attracted the police hanging far behind her. Slowly, the police and Dale joined together. The leading black sheriff William had seen Dale before and knew that this was the bodyguard of the Chinese rancher, so he asked directly, "Hey, man, how is the situation now? Is everyone safe?" "It's safe for now." He was able to wave to me just now, but the damn python is too fast. "We have to quickly surround it, otherwise it will be too late." Dale, who was slightly out of breath, quickly introduced the situation and expressed his thoughts. William nodded when he heard it. This is the best way at the moment. After a few simple instructions, more than a dozen fully armed policemen quickly dispersed and formed a fan shape to surround the direction of the giant python. In the new week, please subscribe and reward. The recent rewards and subscriptions are not very good. 10 chapters burst out in 2 days on May Day, but no one encouraged me. I hid in the corner and felt sad. Finally, I would like to ask a question. Book friends who have a book list on Kidian, can you add this book to the list so that more friends can see it? Chapter 269. The Python's Lair. Dale, where is the python? Have you seen the python? Is Kinzu okay? Zumengyo followed closely, looking at Dale with a choked voice, hoping to get the answer she wanted from her. "It's okay, don't worry, the boss will be fine." After hugging Zumengyo as if to comfort her, Dale turned around and continued to chase the python along the trail. Even William, who was watching from the side, was deeply impressed by the speed. While searching for the python outside in full swing, the golden python blinked a pair of confused eyes, looking at the human who had taken away its food in front of it with great confusion. It was obviously this guy who invaded its territory and took away its food. Why did it still feel that he was its master? Kinzu, with a face full of exhaustion, was lying at the entrance of a cave without any image at the moment, gasping for air, as if he had just been pulled out of the water, without a trace of strength. It was a close call just now. Just before the golden python entered the cave, Kinzu finally heard the system's prompt sound that sounded like a fairy's cry, indicating that the capture was successful. After resting for a long time, Kinzu slowly recovered some strength. Only then did he have time to look at the golden python beside him, which pressed its huge head tightly against the ground to show its submission to him. The huge python head that seemed extremely ferocious to him just now looked very pleasing to the eye. The huge body, circling and piled in the cave passage, looked like a large golden millstone. Tentatively, he put his hand on the head of the giant python and gently stroked it. Kinzu felt that his heartbeat instantly reached 180 bps. Fortunately, the giant python just twisted its head slightly and did not have any other big reaction. Standing up with ecstasy in his heart, Kinzu looked at the huge body of the golden python, which was 6 or 7 meters long, and the head of the python, which was the size of a human head and was constantly swallowing and spitting out the snake tongue, and suddenly felt very proud. He finally had his first killer weapon. With such a big python guarding the men, who would dare to sneak in and cause trouble? Kinzu opened the attribute panel and looked at the attributes of the giant python. Mutated golden python, juvenile, quality. Silver level skills. Strangulation LV1, Stealth LV1. Specialty. Strangulation growth potential. 5 stars. Fuck, juvenile. Silver level. After reading the attributes of this giant python, Kinzu was deeply shocked. Such a big body is still a juvenile. And now it is actually a silver level creature. However, in this way, Kinzu also understood why he was not killed by this guy in one blow. It turned out that it was still a small guy and its strangulation power was not strong. The attack method of the python is very simple. It is nothing more than quickly approaching and grabbing the prey, and then relying on its own terrifying strangulation power to strangle the animal to death. Thinking of this, Kinzu completely understood the matter. It turned out that this guy failed to hunt a big wild boar. When he wanted to hunt a small wild boar, he was preempted by Kinzu and his men. So this guy was furious and brought him back as prey. He shook his head with a smile. "Poor little guy, how did you grow up? You are so stupid to hunt. You can kill such a big wild boar." Rubbing his chest, Kinzu frowned slightly, feeling a little pain. It was probably injured by this guy. Although its strangling power did not kill him in one blow, it was still okay to suffer a minor injury. He looked up and looked around. This was a cave that looked very dry. The surrounding stone walls were very smooth. It seemed that it should be the traces left by this guy crawling in and out every day. He looked inside, but he didn't see anything, because there seemed to be a corner in front. Humans are very curious creatures, and even Kinzu is no exception. Now that there is no danger, he has a great interest in this guy's nest. Who has seen such a big python's nest? Have you seen it? Kinzu has never seen it anyway. Patting the guy's head next to him and motioning him to lead the way, Kinzu took the remington on his back. After checking it, fortunately, it was not crushed by the giant python. The only advantage of American products is that they're thick and tough. Holding the remington and following the giant python, Kinzu quietly walked into the cave. If there was a bayonet in front of the remington, it would be like a Japanese entering the village. Slowly came inside. After passing a corner, Kinzu was surprised to find that the space inside the cave was not small. What appeared in front of Kinzu was a large cave of more than 100 square meters. Because there was no sunlight in the cave, it was a little dark and damp. Moreover, since this giant python lives in it every day, it is natural that there is a disgusting smell here. How to describe it? It was like a pile of socks that had not been washed for more than a month, piled together, and constantly roasted by the fire next to them. That feeling made people feel extremely sour and refreshing. Covering his nose with his hands, Kinzu's brows were almost wrinkled together, and he almost turned around and ran back. But as the old saying goes, curiosity kills the cat. Obviously, he was almost unable to bear the smell, but curiosity in his heart drove him deeper and deeper. When he came to the middle of the cave, Kinzu found out what it meant to be worse than a doghouse. Although the passage outside seemed relatively dry, it was still a little damp inside, so moss grew all around the cave. Looking at it, Kinzu became more and more curious, because he actually found obvious traces of artificial polishing in the cave. Apart from anything else, the big stone in the corner of the cave that looked like a stone bed was not something that a python's nest should have. And around the stone bed, there were some overturned stones, which looked like benches from a distance. Kinzu estimated that the stone tables and stone benches should have been accidentally knocked over by the python. Curiously, Kinzu also temporarily put aside the disgusting smell and prepared to study it carefully. Everything here is full of mystery, which makes him feel like he is exploring and searching for treasure. When he came to the stone table that fell on the ground, Kinzu exerted a little force and easily lifted up the stone table that looked not small. However, the next moment, Kinzu's hands softened, and the stone table that had not yet stood firm fell down again, making a loud bang sound, which scared the golden python following him. Turning his head to look at the golden python behind him, Kinzu trembled and stretched out his hand to point at it, stammering, You guy, actually, eat people? Thank you for the 500 starting coins reward from the poor to the genuine version. Thank you, it's good. It's hard for the poor to read the genuine version, but it's also hard for the author to stay up late to code. Thank you for your understanding and support. Chapter 270 Gold bars in the cave. What appeared in front of Kinzu this time was a skeleton left behind after the death of a human. Turning his head to look at the giant python next to him, Kinzu couldn't help but take a deep breath, and felt a kind of creepy feeling in his heart. Especially when he thought that it might have eaten people, the creepy feeling became even stronger. As if it understood what Kinzu said, the giant python, which was lying there quietly, suddenly raised its head and shook it vigorously, indicating that it didn't do it. When it came here, this pile of things was already here. Besides, humans are not their food, and it can't swallow them. Kinzu thought about it, and it was true. Snakes are different from other beasts. Its bite force can be said to be extremely weak. So usually when giant pythons eat, they swallow that prey directly in one bite, and then rely on their strong digestive ability to digest the prey. Instead of tearing the prey into pieces like other beasts, and then eating, their poor teeth really have no use except injecting venom. Kinzu forced himself to cheer himself up in his heart, loaded the remington in his hand with a click, and carefully approached the pile of bones. After getting close, Kinzu found that there seemed to be a layer of rags attached to the pile of bones. He gently picked up the rags with the gun and took it to his eyes to take a closer look. The rags had been baptized by who knows how many years, and they had rotted into pieces, but it was vaguely visible that this seemed to be a set of military uniforms. Military uniforms. Kinzu's first reaction was that it was impossible. How could there be a dead body wearing a military uniform here? After carefully picking up all the rags and putting them together, Kinzu found that this was indeed a set of military uniforms, because the old rifle next to it and the rotten belt proved everything to him. However, due to the invasion of time, Kinzu could only vaguely see its style, but could not see any color. Could this be an American soldier? But why did he die here? Scratching his head, Kinzu was really confused. Since he couldn't figure it out, he stopped thinking about it and continued to look at the stone cave. After the stone table was moved away, Kinzu made another new discovery, which was a small black wooden box placed in the corner. The whole box was about the size of a small TV, and the surface was pitch black. It was hard to tell whether it was the original color or because it had been stored for too long. Outside the black box, there was also a lock that looked a bit old, but the lock, probably because of its age, now looked shaky. Is there a virus in it? When Kinzu came closer, he hesitated. What if a virus or poison gas was released? Wouldn't he die here? Damn it, let's go for it. My luck shouldn't be so bad. What if it's a treasure? After thinking for a long time, Kinzu couldn't resist the growing curiosity in his heart, so he walked forward and carefully took down the lock that looked shaky. With a creak, the box was opened by Kinzu. However, to his surprise, there was neither the imagined poisonous gas, nor the test tube virus in Kinzu's mind, nor the pearls and jades shining with jewels. There were just a few things that were not clear, quietly placed inside. After a careful look, there was a yellowed notebook, a very old pocket watch, and a few, which seemed to be gold bars. Kinzu immediately became interested. He ignored those things and directly reached out to pick up a slightly blackened gold bar. Kinzu estimated the weight of the gold bar, which was about 7 or 8 taels. There were a few blurred characters on the front. Kinzu carefully identified it and found that it was Qianlong pure gold. Damn! This is a gold bar from the Qianlong period. How could it appear here? Looking at the gold bar in his hand, Kinzu's heart was immediately confused. This is a mountain range in the United States. How could there be an antique from China? If he had seen this gold bar in a cave in China, Kinzu would not be too surprised. However, it was interesting to find this gold bar on the other side of the earth. He picked up the other bars and looked at them. Although the handwriting was a little blurred due to weathering, Kinzu was sure that these words were Qianlong pure gold. As for the other side, some patterns could be vaguely seen, but Kinzu could not tell what they were. After putting the gold bar back, Kinzu picked up the slightly yellowed notebook and flicked through it casually. He was a little stunned. My goodness, with his current English level, he didn't recognize most of it. Just when he was about to study it carefully, Kinzu vaguely heard Dale shouting from outside. He patted his head. He was so curious that he forgot that there were people outside who were worried about him. The giant python beside him seemed to have heard the sound coming from outside. It looked a little scared. Kinzu looked at it with some curiosity. Weren't you so majestic when you brought me here just now? Why are you so weak now? The thoughts were conveyed to him. The giant python seemed to understand what Kinzu meant. It raised its head and flicked its tongue towards the remnant in his hand a few times, making a hissing sound. After thinking about it for a while, Kinzu understood that this guy had also seen people hunting with guns, and had a sufficient understanding of the lethality of this guy. Are you quite smart? Kinzu patted the guy's huge head and scolded him with a smile. Since he thought of it, Kinzu did not delay anymore. However, he looked at the small box, hesitated for a moment, stretched out his hand and flicked it gently, and the dark small box disappeared. Let's go out too. I tell you, you better be honest, otherwise you'll be shot and I can't save you. After warning this guy, Kinzu took it out of the cave. As soon as he walked out of the cave, Kinzu was startled. Oh my god, he almost fell into the sea without noticing. He was carried by this guy just now and didn't notice that the entrance of this cave was actually on the reef by the sea. Outside the cave was the endless sea. Dale, I'm here, can you hear me? Hearing the faint shouting coming from afar, Kinzu also shouted loudly. Chapter 271. Reunion. Quick, over here, the boss's voice is over here. After listening for a while, Dale yelled at the policeman in the distance, then raised the remington and jumped a few times, like a cheetah, and instantly arrived at the beach. Go. Do. Follow up, hurry up. Then, William also called the other policeman and quickly followed. Hey, Dale, don't get excited, I'm fine. Seeing Dale sticking his head down, Kinzu hurriedly greeted her. God bless, it's great." With a light sigh of relief, Dale just jumped down and immediately felt the hair on his body stand up. He raised the remington in his hand and aimed it at the golden python behind Kinzu, and yelled at the same time, "Boss, come here quickly, be careful behind you." Hey, Dale, don't get excited, there is no danger now, look." As he said that, Kinzu gently put his hand on the head of the giant python in the face of Dale's dumbfounded expression. "Oh, God, I must be dazzled. Oh my God, who can tell me what's going on?" The stunned Dale and William, who arrived later, exclaimed at the same time. "Guys, as you can see, it's not dangerous now, is it?" Gently stroking the head of the golden python, Kinzu said to the people in front of him with a chuckle. Although he was a little curious about the police arriving so quickly, he didn't say anything. After all, he was a big taxpayer, although he hadn't paid taxes yet. "Boss, what's going on? How could this happen? Are you sure it won't hurt anyone again?" Although she was very confused about the current performance of the golden python, Dale still didn't put down the remington in her hand. She was on guard, guarding against this guy from attacking again. Looking at the golden python, Dale was so angry that her teeth were itching. It was this guy who took the boss hostage when she was not prepared. If she wasn't far away, she would have shot the guy dead immediately. She didn't want to fall into the hands of the same animal twice. Okay, Dale, listen, put down the gun, it's really not dead, and thank you for your rescue, Mr. Officer, but I'm fine now." He waved at Dale, signaling her to put down the gun. If it went off accidentally, she didn't know if the python was okay, but she was definitely playing with it. Hearing this, Dale obediently put the gun away, but still stared at the guy cautiously, just in case. William and the police looked at each other and put their guns away. Woof woof woof, with a few low barks, Zumengyo and Surui also rushed over. "Kinzu, how are you? Are you okay? Ah. Why is it still there?" Looking at the intact Kinzu, Zumengyo burst into tears. Just as she was about to rush over, she found that the devil-like guy next to her was still there. Since arriving here, Daha and Xiaohe have been staring at the giant python in front of them. The pressure this guy brings to them is not ordinary. But even so, they did not run around with their tails between their legs in fear, but whimpered and glared at the giant python. "It's okay, baby, don't worry." Kinzu took 2 steps forward, gently stretched out his hand to hold Zumengyo's waist, and comforted her softly. At the same time, he nodded to Surui, whose eyes were a little red, indicating that he was fine. "What's wrong with this guy? Did it hurt you?" Being held by Kinzu, Zumengyo's body was slightly stiff, but looking at the golden giant python that followed, her voice trembled again. "Yeah, Kinzu, why is this guy still here?" Looking at the curious or frightened eyes of the 2 girls, Dale and the police, Kinzu smiled helplessly. "You guys, think about the harpy eagles and huskies at home, as well as the manta ray. Aren't they all very docile?" After explaining to the 3 girls softly, they breathed a sigh of relief. Yes, whether it is the harpy eagles at home or the manta ray in the sea, in terms of the degree of danger, they are almost as dangerous as the guy in front of them. And when facing Kinzu, they are all as honest as a thing. It seems that this time is the same. "Ahem, Mr. Clean, I think you can tell us what happened." Reluctantly interrupting the whispers of Kinzu and others, William reached out and took out a small notebook from his arms. It stands to reason that now that the reporter and the victim are fine, they should go to the police station to make a record or something. But it is obvious that William has no intention of taking these guys back to make a record, but decided to just ask them here casually. "As you wish, Mr. Policeman." Kinzu simply narrated the incident. Of course, he did not mention how the giant python could be so obedient. At the same time, he pointed to the hole and continued, "That should be the guy's lair. However, it was not the first one to find it. I also found a body inside. It seems to have been there for a long time. Judging from the situation, it should be a soldier." "Corpse? Soldier?" William paused while taking notes and asked in surprise. "Yes, Mr. Policeman, it should be a soldier. Next to him, there is an old standard rifle." Shrugging his shoulders, Kinzu felt that he was a good person. He gave a guy who might be an invader hope of resting in peace. Yes, Kinzu felt that the guy inside must be an invader, otherwise he could not explain the origin of the gold bars. "Mr. Clean, could you please take us in to have a look?" William and his colleagues looked at each other, then whispered a few words to a few people before coming over. "Of course it's okay, but you have to be prepared, the smell inside is not very pleasant." As he said this, Qinzhu seemed to recall the disgusting smell inside, and his face became a little ugly. It's okay, we have this, Mr. Clean, you can take one too. Handing Qinzhu something that looked like a gas mask, William indicated that they were ready. Mengyo, wait here for a while, I'll take them in to have a look. Gently patting Zhu Mengyo's back, Qinzhu realized that he seemed to have been holding the beauty for a long time. The feeling of holding the beauty in his arms suddenly made him feel like kicking all the police back. Then you be careful. Nodding, Zhu Mengyo did not make trouble. She heard that there was a body inside, and she didn't even plan to go in. Thanks to Feng Xiao, Tiantina, and Chenwei for their tips. Thanks to Xiao Lengzi for his 3,000 starting coins. Congratulations to Feng Xiao and Xiao Lengzi for their promotion to helmsman. Liu Un will make up for the extra update on the weekend. I have to work the night shift at the company exhibition tonight. It will probably be another all-nighter. So tomorrow's update will be tomorrow night. Chapter 272. Amphibious giant python. Wearing the gas mask-like thing, Qinzhu took the flashlight handed over by William, said hello to Zhu Mengyo and the other girls, and then led the golden python into the cave. The dark and humid environment, the pungent smell, even with the mask, can still be faintly smelled. Frowning, Qinzhu walked straight to the place where the skeleton was with the flashlight. Officer William, it's here. Turning his head to look at William who was frowning, Qinzhu said in a muffled voice. In fact, without Qinzhu's reminder, William had already seen the skeleton on the ground, and the clothes next to it that Qinzhu had pieced together most of it, and the style could be vaguely identified. However, the smell here really made him feel a little uncomfortable. He just took a few glances, and then used his white-gloved hands to pick up the rusty rifle next to him, which seemed to fall apart at the touch, and some scattered items. After arriving outside the cave, William took off his mask, took a long breath, and then looked at Qinzhu and the others. Mr. Clean, since everything is fine, we will go back first. Thank you for helping us find the remains of the pioneers. I haven't thanked the police officers yet. I really troubled you today. Seeing the police officers being so polite, Qinzhu felt a little embarrassed. Today's incident really caused trouble for them. Mr. Qin is polite. Serving taxpayers is what we should do. After smiling and being polite, William seemed to suddenly think of something, so he looked at the golden python and said with a smile, Mr. Clean, if you want to adopt this python, you still need to register it at the police station. When Qinzhu heard that he had to register, he immediately became a little worried. Bring this guy to the police station. Are you sure? Hey, Mr. William, can't you help me register here? You know, it's not easy to go out with this guy. Looking at the huge monster that was 6 or 7 meters long, and thinking about the consequences if it suddenly appeared in the police station, William couldn't help but shudder. Moreover, the guy in front of him was a guy that even the director dared not offend. Anyway, it was not a big deal, so he could just do it by the way. The director would not mind. Thinking of this, he said, Okay, Mr. Clean, in this case, I'll just take a few pictures and go back. After taking a lot of pictures of the golden python in front of him, William took the collected things and went back to the helicopter with the team members along the original route. It seems that we have to give a token of our gratitude to the Revere Police Department. We're from the same village, and we still need to trouble these guys when we encounter problems. Looking at the backs of William and the others as they walked away, Qinzhu couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Although these guys didn't dare to neglect him for some reason, these were favors after all. If there was no interest connection, this kind of relationship would not last long. After they left, Qinzhu shook his head, put aside the thoughts in his mind, and looked at the tearful girl in front of him. Okay, Mengyo, I'm fine, aren't I? Don't cry. Reaching out to wipe the tears from the corners of Zhu Mengyo's eyes, Qinzhu comforted her softly. However, it's better to be uneasy. With this comfort, Zhu Mengyo's tears, which had been flowing silently, suddenly burst into tears. I was scared to death. I was really scared to death. I thought I would never see you again. Woo! Sobbing and throwing herself into Qinzhu's arms, Zhu Mengyo told the panic in her heart intermittently. At the moment when Qinzhu was swept away by the giant python, she really felt that the sky was about to fall, just like when she was blocked in the alley by a few gangsters. That feeling was filled with fear and despair. Okay, I'm fine. Listening to her sobbing, Qinzhu felt a little blocked in his heart. But he said nothing, just patted her back gently, comforting the lovely girl in his arms. After a while, as if she had recovered from the shock, Zhu Mengyo slowly stopped sobbing. Subconsciously turning her head, Zhu Mengyo saw that there were two pairs of bright big eyes beside her, staring at her with their eyes wide open, without blinking. Ah! With a soft exclamation, she quickly broke free from Qin Zhu's arms, looking at the two people opposite with a flushed face, not knowing what to say. Qin Zhu, is this big guy really listening now? Surui, who had calmed down after seeing her best friend's embarrassment, gradually shifted her big eyes to the big guy next to her that was as big as a millstone, and asked with strong curiosity. Yes, look, come here. Qin Zhu understood Surui's intention and reached out to call the golden python that was in a daze next to him. Seeing the call of its master, the golden python twisted its huge body and came to the few people in the blink of an eye. Ah! Qin Zhu, this guy, will he really not hurt anyone again? The sudden appearance of the big guy scared the bold Surui, not to mention the originally weak Zhu Mengyo. She quickly hid behind Qin Zhu, then poked her head to look at the big guy. Don't worry, Mengyo, it will never hurt humans again. Besides, this guy has never hurt humans. If we hadn't robbed its prey, it might not even pay attention to us. Gently holding Zhu Mengyo's soft little hands, Qin Zhu turned to look at Dale again and thanked her sincerely. Dale, thank you today. Boss, you were too polite. These are what I should do. After nodding slightly to Qin Zhu, Dale looked at the big guy again. Boss, how are you going to place it? If you take it back like this, it will easily scare the cowboys. You're right. How about this, I will let this guy swim across the sea. By the way, this guy should be able to swim, right? Qin Zhu turned his head and looked at the big guy. It should not be a land python, right? As if seeing Qin Zhu's doubts, the golden python did not respond to him, but swam directly to the sea not far away. With the sound of splash and splashing water, the golden python seemed to be like a fish in water in the sea, and swam freely. Hee, this guy is also a sea python. Qin Zhu looked curiously at the big guy who kept twisting his body in the sea and doing various difficult swimming movements. He couldn't help laughing. He didn't expect that this guy was really an amphibious python. After signaling it to swim along the coast to the vicinity of the villa, Qin Zhu took the three women who had calmed down and returned to the original way. Thank you Feng Xiai and Xini and Lao Chong for your reward support. Thank you Xiaowei Holingzi 1024 for your support of 1000 starting coins. Thank you Yishao for your support of 5000 starting coins. I worked overtime all night and just woke up. Today is the first chapter. Chapter 273 Humanoid Beast. After walking a few steps, Dahe and Xiaohe, who had been tense and staring at the giant python, immediately surrounded Qin Zhu, whimpering non-stop, and the short tail behind them was shaking non-stop. Obviously, the pressure brought by the big guy just now to the two little guys was really great. It was not until it completely disappeared on the sea that the two little guys dared to relax. Okay, little guys, you all performed well. We will have a snack when we go back tonight. Qin Zhu smiled and patted the heads of the two little guys. Qin Zhu also heard from Dale that after the golden giant python began to consciously control the traces it left behind, it was still relying on the two little guys to lead the way that everyone could find it so quickly. Moreover, the two little guys never retreated from the beginning. Even though they were scared and trembling, they were still not scared to move forward. This is really an amazing thing for two half-grown puppies. Especially when Qin Zhu has not deliberately trained them, it is even more precious. Boss, these two guys are really good, thanks to them. Looking at the two idiots who kept acting cute, Dale praised them sincerely. Even the specially trained military dogs in the army are no better than this, right? Thinking of this, Dale looked at the two little guys with a strange look in her eyes. She knew whether Qin Zhu had trained these two guys. It seemed that she had to find a chance to talk to the boss. It would be a pity to waste such a good seedling. Along the way, Surui finally recovered from the momentary panic a few minutes ago. She began to chatter and ask Qin Zhu non-stop. She was really curious about how Qin Zhu could subdue such a big guy in such a dangerous situation. Holding Zhu Mengyo's little hand, Qin Zhu tightened the remington on his back and looked at Surui with a smile. Do you need to ask such an obvious question? Of course, that guy saw that I was handsome, so he knelt down and begged for mercy as soon as he returned to the cave. Ouch! Surui, who was not very honest in her walk, was almost tripped to the ground by Qin Zhu's shameless words. After standing up again under Dale's pull, Surui looked at Qin Zhu with a smile on her face and squeezed out a sentence from between her teeth. If you have no shame, you're invincible. While talking and laughing, the few of them followed a passage pressed by the giant python and returned to the place where Qin Zhu was swept away. These guys didn't run away. Looking at the few little wild boars still wandering around the big wild boar in some surprise, Kinzu rubbed his hands and gestured to Dale. Nodding in understanding, Dale carefully went around to the other side and together with Kinzu, drove these 5 little guys who had lost their father or mother together again. Hectares, this big guy, how were we going to get it back? Kinzu tried to lift the big boar that had been dead for a long time. The big boar, which was more than 2 meters long, was scratching his head. Although Kinzu was able to lift the big guy that looked like a small meat mountain in an instant with his own powerful explosive power, he couldn't walk far. Boss, let me try. With the grande one on his back, Dale slowly walked forward, grabbed one of the front legs and one of the hind legs of the big boar, and put his arms to work hard. In the eyes of Kinzu and the other 2 who looked at them as aliens, he carried that guy on his shoulders. This, Dale, how about we lift it together? Kinzu swallowed hard, looking at the slightly thin figure on the small meat mounting, and his words were a little stuttered. Damn, do you have to be so violent? This is simply a human-shaped beast, okay? Moreover, looking at her curvy and devilish figure, if anyone marries her and makes her unhappy in bed, it will be over in a few minutes. No, let's go. After walking a few steps easily, Dale turned around and looked at the few people. It felt as if what she was carrying on her shoulders was not a wild boar weighing 200 or 300 kilograms, but a large bag of cotton, light and fluttering. Let's go, keep up. With their throats dry, Kinzu and Surui hurried to catch up with them with the help of Da Hectares and Xiao Hectares. On the way, Kinzu called John and asked him to drive a pickup truck to pick them up. But this guy actually said that he was supervising the work of Once and others, and he couldn't leave, so he sent his son John Jr. to come. After hanging up the phone, Kinzu was still a little confused. Supervising the work of Once and others? Haven't they been cooperating for a long time? Why do they still need to supervise? Did they slack off and were discovered by John? Once, who was working with the workers on the ranch, didn't know that with just a few words, he became a lazy guy in the eyes of Kinzu and John. If he knew this, Ont would have cried in the toilet. It was because Kinzu's request was urgent. In order to complete the project as soon as possible with quality and quantity, he, the project manager, rolled up his sleeves and worked in person, but it didn't end well. When Dale came to the entrance of the mountain with the big wild boar, Little John was already waiting for them in a pickup truck. Seeing Dale carrying the big wild boar, Little John's mouth, which was not small to begin with, never closed. Dale, you won't just carry it out like this. It wasn't until Dale threw the big wild boar heavily into the back of the pickup truck that Little John reacted and spoke a little fluently. He knew Dale. They used to play together when they were young, but it's only been a few years since they last met. It has become a humanoid beast. That big wild boar must be at least 200 to 300 kilograms, right? 200 to 300 kilograms, right? Yeah. What's wrong? Dale patted the dust off her hands, panting slightly, turned her head to look at the blood stains on her shirt, frowned a little. Now it seems that her shirt is scrapped. No, nothing. Swallowing saliva with the same difficulty, Little John hurriedly helped Kinzu and others to catch those dishonest little guys and put them on the pickup truck. Dale, are you tired? After everyone got in the car, Little John started the car quickly. Kinzu looked at Dale in the back seat, his face full of concern. He couldn't let himself, a bodyguard with explosive force, get tired just because of moving a wild boar. And Zumengyu on the side. Not only was she not unhappy or jealous because Kinzu cared about Dale, but she also looked at Dale with concern. She was completely stunned by this not-so-tall blonde. Even the bodyguards around her grandfather were about the same level, right? It seemed that Kinzu hired her because he saw her ability. She really thought too much. After a few bitter smiles in her heart, Zumengyu felt relieved. It was impossible to say that she had no opinion on the 2 blonde girls around Kinzu. As the saying goes, there may be women who don't eat, but there is really no woman who doesn't get jealous. Si est escuchando esta novela en un canal distinto a mundo fanfic novelas, significat lo descarga and y subir en sinis fuetzos invitamos cordialmente a visitar nuestro canal. Mundo fanfic novelas all encontras la versión original de esta historia y podrás explorar muchas otras novelas de diversos narradores. Te esperamos para sumergirte en un mundo de novelas incredibles. Chapter 274 The Python's Arrangement. I'm fine. Smiling and waving her hands, Dale really didn't take this seriously in her heart. When she was in the army, she had to carry heavy loads and cross-country every day, which was much harder than this. Well, that's good. Seeing that Dale was only slightly out of breath, Kinzu was relieved. However, looking at the bloodstains on her shirt, he turned his head to look at Zumengyo on the side and continued. Mengyo accompanied Dale in the afternoon to go shopping in Revere and buy some clothes. Following Kinzu's gaze, Zumengyo also saw the bloodstains on Dale's body, so she quickly agreed. Seeing that Dale wanted to refuse, Kinzu smiled and waved his hands and said, "Okay, Dale, these are just employee benefits. Besides, such a big wild boar, it's more than enough to change a few sets of clothes." Although she was very puzzled about how a wild boar that was not worth much could be changed into a few sets of clothes, she still nodded. Whatever the boss said, it was what it was. After returning to the villa, Kinzu did not let Dale do it, but he and Little John lifted the big wild boar down. "Little John, can you handle this guy?" After finding a rope, Kinzu and Little John finally hung the wild boar on a thick red maple tree next to the villa. "Boss, leave this to me." Little John, who was a man of few words, rarely showed a confident smile. It was rare for a cowboy living on a ranch to not handle livestock. He nodded with satisfaction. Since Little John could do it, it would be the best. Although Kinzu liked to eat wild boar meat, he was not a very diligent person. After returning to the house and entering the bathroom, he thoroughly washed off the strange smell mixed with the wild boar and the giant python, and then Kinzu changed his clothes and walked out. To be honest, if Kinzu had not been determined, he would have been fainted by the strange smell on his body. "Boss, why are you back so early?" After going downstairs, Eva in the living room couldn't help but ask curiously. She had asked her sister just now, but her sister didn't say anything. Kinzu sat down on the soft leather sofa. After hearing Dale's question, he thought about it for a while. He couldn't hide this matter from others. The giant python would show up in front of everyone sooner or later, so he smiled and told the story again. While talking, he picked up the apple on the coffee table and took a bite. Looking at the little Jerry who was looking at him eagerly, he had no choice but to cut half of it and stuff it into the greedy little guy. "You mean, a giant python of 6 or 7 meters?" It was a long time before Kinzu finished talking, and Eva's tempting little mouth was still not closed. Looking at the bright red lips, Kinzu couldn't help but harden slightly, expressing his response to it. "Yes, are you afraid? You will live with us in the future, just like this little guy." Kinzu picked up the little rabbit who was staring at the apple in Jerry's arms with envy, cut off a small piece and put it in his hand, and fed it to the little rabbit who was getting more and more relaxed. "No, I'm not afraid." Thinking of the 6 or 7 meter python, Eva swallowed her saliva involuntarily, but thinking of the 2 equally ferocious birds of prey upstairs who were honest, her heart was finally at ease. As she was talking, the 3 girls also changed and came down. Seeing Dale, Eva hurried over. The 2 sisters kept whispering to each other. It was obvious that Eva was asking about the truth of the matter. She hoped that Kinzu was teasing him. "You don't really want that big guy to live in the ranch, do you?" Looking up at Eva, who looked a little strange, Zumengyo knew that she must have known about this. However, she was worried about such a big guy living in the ranch. "Don't worry, let it move in the sea for the time being. After a while, I will make a river here and let the mountain stream here, so that it can move freely here." Kinzu gestured and told Zumengyo his idea, which shocked this little woman who had seen big scenes. "You mean, let a tributary from the mountain stream? God, how long would it take?" Looking up at Kinzu with a calm face, Zumengyo could no longer sit still. She almost couldn't help but strangle this spendthrift. "Is there anyone as spendthrift as you? No matter how much money I have, I can't stand your tossing. Ahem, aren't you scared by the gangsters? Bring this big guy here to guard the villa, I wonder who dares to barge in." After coughing twice, Kinzu gritted his teeth and told Zumengyo part of his intention under her fiery gaze. Although Kinzu only thought of this later, it was indeed worth it for him to do such a big project. "Just because of this, you want to bring a tributary here? This money is enough to hire a few more bodyguards, right? Are you sure you are not doing this to satisfy your own bad taste?" Tsurugi on the side mercilessly exposed Kinzu's explanation. As a hedonist, she would not be fooled by these seemingly reasonable explanations. How could it be? Think about it, these animals are the most sensitive to danger. With their advance warning, can't we prepare early? Helplessly making up a bunch of nonsense explanations, Kinzu almost couldn't help but jump up and cover Tsurugi's sexy little mouth. "This explanation I finally came up with was not easy. If Zhu Mengyo knew that I had to divert a tributary just to make an indoor fish tank, she would chop me to pieces. The reason why he cared so much about Zhu Mengyo's opinion was that since he was swept away by the giant python, the girl did not shy away from some intimate actions with him. For example, one of the landlord king's dirty hands was now grasping that slender waist, and it was still moving. If this made her think of me as a prodigal son, these benefits might be gone again. Is that so? But, it's just a giant python, okay? Or should we go back to China? Hearing Qin Zhu say this, Zhu Mengyo thought about what happened to him some time ago, and she became a little worried about him. Don't worry, I have other plans. Think about it, isn't there a manta ray in the sea? If it doesn't work, I'll get some sharks back. If anyone dares to break into the manor again, I'll feed him to the sharks. As he spoke, Qin Zhu's tone revealed a murderous intent. He was not just talking, but really planned to get some sharks to raise for fun. Thank you Fengxiai for your support, thank you Kutashi for your 500 starting coins, thank you Mugu for your many book coins, I wish you to become the king soon. Chapter 275 Preparation for Strengthening. Okay, I'll leave you alone. What are you going to do with those little wild boars? Shaking her head, Zhu Mengyo was not going to continue on this topic and reluctantly changed the subject. If they continue talking, this guy might go get a few whales. How about raising them first? Following Zhu Mengyo's words, Qin Zhu thought about it for a while. A big wild boar could be eaten for a long time, so it's better to raise these little guys and kill them when you want to eat them. It's up to you, but where are you going to raise them? Shrugging indifferently, Zhu Mengyo took the well-fed duduk from Qin Zhu's hand and began to tease this cute little guy. Scratching his head, Qin Zhu was really stumped this time. This is not a rural area in China. Basically every household has a pig pen. Does he have to build a pig pen for these little guys? Boss, just put up a fence in the woods next to it. Eva, who was standing by, was a little dejected after confirming the news from her sister. However, she still interrupted and reminded Qin Zhu after hearing what they were talking about. Little John did not disappoint Qin Zhu. He took half an hour to deal with a wild boar weighing nearly 300 kilograms. By the way, Little John, take this one over and give it to the cowboys as a snack. After Little John was done, Qin Zhu pointed at the wild boar that was split in half and asked him to take half to the cafeteria so that Sooty could give it to the cowboys as a snack. Okay, thank you, boss. After politely thanking him, Little John carried a piece of wild boar meat on the pickup truck. Although they did not like these guys very much, they had to accept the boss's kindness. Hey, you guys still eat these things? Qin Zhu pointed to the cleaned animal organs in front of him and looked at Little John with curiosity. No, boss, we don't eat them. But I heard that you like to eat these things, so I cleaned them. If you don't like them, I'll take them away. Sitting in the pickup truck, Little John said a little awkwardly. He had heard about this from his classmates before, and he wasn't sure whether it was true or not. What if the boss didn't eat these things either? Would he think that I was teasing him on purpose? Thinking of this, Little John's heart became even more up and down. I don't know what got into him today, so he just cleaned these things that he usually felt disgusted with. No, Little John, you did a great job, thank you so much. Looking at the nervous Little John, Qin Zhu laughed sincerely. Good guy, he had been at the ranch for so long, but this was the first time he had seen these things, because Americans, except for foie gras, almost didn't eat animal organs, and there was nowhere to buy them, but Qin Zhu was stumped. Moreover, the cowboys on the ranch also threw away these animal organs directly. If he didn't have beef to eat every day, he would have wanted to return home. Although Qin Zhu only smiled slightly, for Little John, it was just like the spring breeze in March, gently brushing his hesitant heart. Boss, as long as you like it. After a long sigh of relief, Little John smiled innocently, started the pickup truck, and drove towards the living area. When the car drove away, Qin Zhu happily packed up the large intestines and internal organs that Little John had cleaned, preparing to prepare a few plates for lunch. Boss, can this really be eaten? Eva covered her nose gently and looked at Qin Zhu busy in the kitchen. She looked unbelievable from a distance. Of course, and this thing tastes quite good. Before Qin Zhu could speak, Suri, who was watching from the side, interrupted. These things were her favorites, especially the spicy pepper pig heart, which tasted really good. Yeah, you'll know after you try it. Watching Qin Zhu busy in the kitchen, Zhu Mengyo felt that her heart was intoxicated a little more. The man in front of her seemed to be omnipotent. At noon, Kinzu used the internal organs to make a sumptuous lunch, but considering the Dale and Diva might not be used to it, he made 2 plates of beef and wild boar. The table of delicious food was full of color, aroma and taste. Not only did the 2 foreign girls praise it, but even Zumengyu and her 2 daughters, who were used to eating delicacies from land and sea, couldn't help but give a thumbs up. When lunch was over, Kinzu walked out of the door while leaving a few women to clean up the mess. In his opinion, men cooking and women washing dishes, well, it was a perfect match. Coming out of the back door of the villa, Kinzu walked along the bluestone steps and strolled to the beach. Behind him, Daha and Xiaohe also followed him for a walk with 2 small bellies. After arriving at the beach, Daha and Xiaohe became alert all of a sudden, digging their front paws on the ground, arching their bodies slightly, with their hair standing up all over their bodies, and whimpering. However, what should have looked like a majestic posture was ruined by the 2 round bellies. Okay, go play on the side. From now on, you have to live in peace. Do you hear me? Kinzu patted the furry heads of the 2 little guys and scolded them loudly. Daha and Xiaohe stood up slightly, but they were still whimpering softly. Obviously, their vigilance was still very high. Who let this big guy hurt his owner? Especially in front of their brothers, he rolled his owner away. This is intolerable. Even if you were a big guy now, our brothers are not easy to bully. This is the true portrayal of the hearts of these 2 guys. However, what they don't know is that even if it really grows to the height of their ancestor, the Siberian wolf, it is not certain whether it is the opponent of the giant python in front of them. Especially when Kinzu was going to strengthen it. That's right, Kinzu came here to strengthen this big guy. He wanted to see if a silver level pet would break through after being strengthened, and what level it would be after breaking through. When the 6 or 7 meter long giant in the sea slowly came to Kinzu's side, the 2 little guys whimpered and slowly retreated. This might was not ordinary. Looking at the golden body in front of him, under the sunlight, it seemed like a golden giant python made of gold. Kinzu was looking forward to it. Opening the system and looking at the spiritual energy value that had just been restored to 10 points, Kinzu felt a little painful. You know, it takes 10 points of spiritual energy to strengthen it once. However, in order to have a more powerful golden giant python, all this is worth it. Fin est capture much as great as Pelaga has to el final. No se olvid dull like bus gasms contendo exclusive yxo in medito. Siascravata news to Patreon. Recurda, card alike, siascripsino donakin nos anima continue. Great as a todos nos vemos on Elpsmodo.